Hello and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Riche of the MHRT Network. If you take a look over this way here to my left or your right, depending on which way you are facing your screen, you will see the real Alex Givens catch his content there on Arrowhead Addict. And every week we get closer to the season, Alex. The Lightning Fast Fantasy Podcast is coming out with you and Coach Defense. Down directly below, Robert, great having you back on the show to represent your Chargers. And what a great show to return back, because we do have a special guest who will be announced very shortly. And then diagonally here, we got Mr. Jack Kenna repping his Las Vegas Raiders with really a shirt that only a Raiders fan is really allowed to get away with wearing.
That shirt is classic.
It is.
It's
great. So
I was like, does that say what I think it says?
No, it says F Raiders emblem.
It's like Austin Powers, Fook.
Yes, yeah.
I was going to go.
Well, a lot of Raider fans don't get it unless you live in Northern California. Then you grow up in Northern California when they were the Oakland Raiders and the Niners right across the bay.
No, I totally the history was not lost on me there. I connected all of those dots. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest. This is going to be first of a few shows where we are going to be covering the AFC North, which we have spoken about multiple times on this podcast. I think we can all collectively agree that the AFC North is going to be an absolute slugfest for our division.
Bloodbath.
It's going to be absolutely. It's going to be a gauntlet. And our special guest is host of Locked on Browns. He has been doing that podcast for a number of years. We're going to go ahead and bring him in. Stage left. Please all welcome Mr. Jeff Lloyd.
Woo!
Jeff,
Come on, Jeff.
Welcome aboard.
How we doing, guys? How's everybody doing tonight?
We're doing great, thanks. Much better that we can start talking football and being even more broad as we start getting into things. What makes this podcast a little bit unique is you have four divisional rivals that are all talking modestly, calmly amongst ourselves about the division, which is a rarity in and of itself. And we do use air quotes there because, well, as you can expect, things are going to get heated from time to time. But we have been speaking quite a bit on the podcast for the last several weeks. That wasn't just hyperbole or just, verbal diarrhea there. We have been speaking a ton about the AFC North because that is a division, let me tell you. And we'd like to hear your take on your Cleveland Browns first. Is there any news that you think are to be relevant or pertinent in terms of major changes to your team and your roster that our AFC West fans should know about?
Well, I mean, it went a variety of different ways. We played Denver obviously last year, as you know, but Deshaun Watson was not involved in that game. No. A lot of the talk right now is about the rehab process. Andrew Berry seems to think that Deshaun Watson is ahead of where they thought he was, and it's come with a lot of flack. And look, anything with Deshaun Watson is, and everybody understands the reasons and the why. Of course, why that happens. But it wasn't about OTAs. It wasn't about mini camp. It's Deshaun Watson to be ready for September. So I don't think anybody who's truly looking at this is not have any questions about where he's at right now. I mean, nobody's playing a football game until September. So there's no reason to push him and just, and you saw, growth, you saw development over the OTAs and mini camp where it was, there were days where he wasn't throwing, and then all of a sudden towards the end, now we're starting to see him rip it, throwing balls with velocity, throwing balls, 40, 50-yard patterns, which is what you were hoping to see at this point. Whether or not when Nick Chubb joins this team is going to be a huge, huge determination about. I don't know necessarily the success, because week 2 last year is when he went down, and the Browns still went on to that season they did, but he's a very vital piece to this team. And I think the Browns were always going to transcend to more of a passing team. When you made that move for Deshaun Watson, it makes sense. You get it that you're not going to be a run first team anymore. You're probably going to be more a throw first team, but you wanted to have that in your back pocket. So they didn't have it last year. I think at some point they're hoping they're going to have, of course, Deshaun under center, Nick Chubb as maybe not the full-time running back, but a guy that can be featured, 15, maybe max 20 times when he does come back. But those are big questions. I think nobody has any questions about the defense. It's just pretty much about the offense at this point.
So obviously, as you can expect with any football podcast, we have a wide, we'll call it varied degrees of opinions here, which is, I'm sure your podcast there is absolutely no different there, Jeff, in terms of what you get in the comments. So there's going to be varied things that you're going to see scroll across your screen, some of which we will agree with, others we won't, but we do welcome all of the varied questions and opinions in the chat. I think it's important to have a diverse set of opinions coming into things like this, where we can start asking different questions and, maybe have different advantages and angles on different topics. So Chubb is a huge kind of part of your team. Watson's recovery is going to be a huge part in terms of kind of where he's at. I guess this is incredibly pertinent given the number of touches Watson potentially is going to have on the ball for you guys. If he is not 100% and maybe he's got a couple weeks to go, would you foresee your team perhaps sitting him to give him that extra little bit? Or would you think that they would just kind of put him out there anyway?
There's no reason to believe he's not going to be 100%. So it seems like a scenario not really to play. And I think they would rather, honestly, I mean, with all that goes on and the talk around Deshaun Watson, the worst thing would be is if he didn't start week 1. Because think about it, if Jameis Winston went out there and maybe this team went 2-0, and that beginning stretch for them is huge. They play all the NFC East, and they kind of need to eat against the NFC East. So they went 3-2, 4-1. That's only going to make things, more cloudy, probably, as far as, the speculation in the chat around it. He'll play week 1. There's no reason to believe, and especially what we just saw, within the past week, that there is no reason to believe he's not ready to go in September.
That's fair enough. It's fair enough. I mean, obviously, your starting quarterback is going to be a critical linchpin for any team, and then being able to build that chemistry. And just one thing that I think a lot of AFC West fans don't realize, I'm almost certain Jeff does, though, is prior to his injury last season, Deshaun Watson was actually putting up some pretty solid stats. He had a pretty good stat sheet in terms of when he got it prior to injury. So if he can come back even to that level or close to it, I really do think the Browns are going to be, I mean, they were already a good team last year, even without Watson in many regards, but with him back, I think they're going to be even more dangerous than they were last year. And then I think that they're going to have the ability, as you said, Jeff, earlier, they're going to probably try to go more pass first this year, more than run first. But if you look at your history, what you've been able to do as a team, you've been incredibly efficient at running the ball and making teams pay for not being able to stop the run. And that has been a huge kind of A versus B. And if you can do both this year, that'll, I think, allow you guys to go very, very far. With regards to a couple of the teams there, Robert, I'm going to throw over to you. Speaking of not being able to stop the run,
Damn.
welcome back. Welcome back after missing last week, my man. Welcome back. Yeah, there you go. So, curious as to what you think. What kind of question you have for Jeff here in terms of when the Chargers play the Browns? It's going to be a really interesting game, I think, all around. I think the entire division, but specifically for the Browns, what's your question?
Yeah, Jeff, my question is just going to be, we play each other almost basically like midpoint of the season, week 9, and then you guys have your bye following us. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think this season Deshaun needs to do? I'll say more consistently, because like you said, the defense is already solid. You have a perennial defensive player of the year in Myles Garrett. I mean, the dude is, just wreck shop wherever he is. You have, Denzel Ward. You have you have solid pieces on that defense. So that side of the ball is good. But on the offense, Nick, like you said, Nick Chubb's coming off the injury. So this is, you signed Jerry Jeudy. This is definitely going to be a more pass first offense. So what do you think Deshaun Watson needs to do this season and more so against the Chargers that is going to separate himself, because he gave him the big contract. I think we can all agree he hasn't really performed up to that up until this point, and I know he's been injured a little bit, but yeah, just kind of give me your opinions on Deshaun Watson kind of as a whole going forward.
Well, Deshaun Watson, through his own podcast, through his quarterback coach, Quincy Avery, has basically told you, like, the one thing that has always been an issue with Deshaun Watson his entire career going back to Clemson is he's just a slow starter, whether it's in-season slow starter, in-game slow starter. And, you go back to that magical last year he had in Houston where the team was terrible, and guys like J.J. Watt were literally apologizing to him as they walked off the end of the year. But at that point, Deshaun was like in mode. It was late in the season. Obviously, it didn't matter as far as success for the Titans, but he was putting up a large amount of numbers. It's starting early. Now, the Raven game last year, I am one of those people that say anytime they want to discuss, Deshaun Watson, what he did or didn't do last year, that second half against the Ravens, he was phenomenal. 14 of 14, got his team in position, they won the game. But also, first play of the game, it was an awkward play where he ended up throwing a pick six to Kyle Hamilton, where she basically just got stripped of the ball. His own worst enemy in there. Week 1, home against the Bengals. Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow, I don't know what Joe Burrow was going on with him that day. I think he got hit early, and he wasn't really. But even still, he got hit early. The rain, and meanwhile they're saying, well, the rain's an issue, but nobody's saying the rain's an issue for Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson took a hit about 3 minutes to go in the first half, led his team down for a touchdown afterwards, and all of a sudden he played really, really well to close it out. So you can see through Deshaun's words, like you can find pinpoint evidence like that confirms kind of what he's saying. And the Raven game, which they won, certainly he started slow. The Bengal game, week 1, which he started slow. So you kind of see it. And he doesn't have to go out there. And look, he doesn't have to put up Josh Allen numbers. He's got a really, really good defense. He's got pass rush. He's got coverage. He's got everything a quarterback can hope. It's just probably starting a little bit more on time, starting a little bit more right out of the box. That's the biggest thing. Because he doesn't have to go, 35 for 43 and 370 and 4 scores. With the defense and the game plan, the way the Browns are structured, those are things it'd be great if he did it, but they don't necessarily need it. They can win each and every week as long as they play within their 3 units: offense, defense, special teams.
Yeah. I think just a kind of a quick follow-up. In that him starting slow, do you think that's something he can change? Because like you said, it's something he's struggled with since Clemson. So do you think this late into his career, that's something that's he can fix and alter? Or is that something that the Browns are just going to kind of have to live with and say, well, let's just be a run first heavy team at like the first quarter and a half and kind of wait for Deshaun to, pick it up a little bit?
Well, that's one of the biggest reasons why Ken Dorsey is here and why there was a change made within the offense coordinator. I think, for the Browns, and for Stefanski, the first 4 seasons he was here, he had the same offense coordinator. And they pretty much almost had the same coaching staff for 4 seasons. Look, good, which they had some bad, certainly as well. But after 4 years, you got to start switching things up. Unless you're, winning trophies and you're winning Lombardis, then no, you're not going to shake things up. But
don't even, Alex. Don't even.
But the point of it all is, at some point you got to transition, and that's kind of what the thought process was here, with the move and Ken Dorsey coming in, and Ken Dorsey comes in, and Ken Dorsey's not concerned about the run game. He knows they have Nick Chubb, but his job and where his success and where he's going to be, basically evaluated is, where does Deshaun go? And it's been weird. Deshaun barely played his first year here, barely played his second year here. So, like anybody wants to say, oh, well, the contract was a failure, was a success. Well, it's kind of like an incomplete. You can't put it either way. There's not really enough to show either way. However, it'll be judged this year, hopefully, if Deshaun plays all these games. And certainly Ken Dorsey is going to be like right along inside with it, because Ken Dorsey's main job here is to make sure Deshaun Watson in the passing game get going early, get going often, and stay going for 17 weeks and obviously into the playoffs.
Right. So I think you hit on something interesting there, Jeff, with regards to the Browns. And I'm going to throw over real quick after I kind of make the comment over here to Jack, is we've seen the Browns transition from having some challenges. And I'm trying to be extremely kind in terms of how records were in early days there. But we've seen almost a flipping of a switch. I have no other way of explaining it. I mean, your team has made one of the fastest switchovers of any team that I can think of in my fandom of the NFL, from kind of being what a lot of teams would see as an easy win to basically being one of the toughest outs of any team that they're going to play against on their schedule. I mean, and consistently do so. It's one thing to have like a fluke season where you draft the one rookie that shows out, or bring in that one veteran that kind of flashes for like the last year of his contract or something. It's quite another to do what the Browns have done, which is a very A versus B moment in your team's history, and sustain what you've been able to do, which I think is fantastic for the NFL. No one wants to see a Browns team that is just kind of like, oh, well, who cares? In fact, no one really wants to see any team that they don't have to really worry about, because everyone wants to watch good football on Sundays. And the Browns have been consistently in the upper echelon of the NFL, certainly on a defensive side of the ball, for 4 or 5 years now, at least. And I think we're going to continue to see that just because of the way you're built. Jack, with that in mind, as we look ahead to the Raiders versus Browns, what kind of question do you have for Jeff?
You got a couple. So if we're going to get the passing early and often, and this is a question I know Raider fans are going to be interested in a way of like right now with the Browns and his contract, since this is his final year. And is Amari still your number one, or does Deshaun prefer somebody else over him?
Well, I think Amari is still certainly the number one. And what you look is, for 2 years that Amari's been here, it was Jacoby Brissett for 11 weeks. Then it was 6 weeks with Deshaun Watson. Then it was Deshaun Watson. Then it was PJ Walker. It was Dorian Thompson-Robinson. It was Joe Flacco. I mean, it was a really, really whirlwind. But the one thing you saw.
So do you also see then, are the Browns or they're just going to wait until the end of the season and then play it out then?
With the contract, I think the Browns have already told Amari Cooper's camp they are ready to commit to 2025. They do not really want to put any more guaranteed money after 2025, which means he gets his money this year. And I think one of the biggest reasons Amari is Cooper is concerned about his money for this season is Nick Chubb was in the same situation last year. Went into the season with no guaranteed money. We all know what happened to Nick Chubb. Amari Cooper sees a wide receiver market that is exploding right now. What can I get for myself? But he's also at that awkward age where he just turned 30. The Browns are committed through his year 30 season. They're ready to commit to year 31. It's kind of like Leonardo DiCaprio and women. There's a certain age with wide receivers where people aren't really that interested anymore. And unfortunately for Amari, the Browns are willing to give it that 1 year. They are. But, could it be one of those things where it's, 2 years, quote unquote, but basically all the money comes in year one? I think the Browns are good with that. But keep in mind, the Browns have brought in 5 wide receivers since they brought in Amari Cooper. David Bell, Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, and Jamari Thrash. So the Browns seem pretty stout on, we're going to go the way we want to go. And the Browns, they win most of these negotiations they have with their own players because they think, their biggest thing is, look, we'll come with the money up front. And then, of course, we'll always reduce it in, salary cap, signing bonuses, yada, yada, yada. But that's kind of where it's at.
So that was we've actually spoken about this, and we had a bit of a roundtable discussion, Jeff. I'd love to hear your opinion on this. You mentioned wide receivers, and you mentioned you bringing in a whole bunch. I have been
old wide receiver.
Well, I think Jeff and I have to have at least a modest discussion about that, just very briefly. If we're gonna have, if we're gonna do this, I think we need to do this. But when we're talking about wide receiver market, I have been of the opinion, and I'm very curious as to your take, Jeff, on this, which is, I believe wide receivers are coming out of college more polished than they have ever come out of college due to the passing game at the college level and the number of passes they've caught, complexities of routes that they're running, et cetera, et cetera. It's my opinion, for what it's worth, that we are going to likely start to see a depression in the wide receiver market as a result of the number of wide receivers that are quote unquote elite coming out of college getting greater and greater and greater, and the drop off between first round wide receivers and say like fourth and fifth round wide receivers become very narrow or slim margin, which in my opinion will mean that these contracts will start to slow for the wide receiver market. And we may even start to see the inverse happen, sort of like we've seen for running backs coming out of the draft. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the first thing that's going to hurt that is the wide receivers do not take the beating that the running backs obviously take, and that is the biggest issue where the running back number is there. But a lot of it comes down to flavor, and you look what the Rams are doing, what the Rams are paying. Cup, Nakua, very similar guys, and most likely they're going to pay both of them. It's about what feeds into your system and about what you value. I don't disagree where maybe it's more of a draft type of thing where, hey, you might find a guy in round 4, round 5 who can catch 70 balls right out of the gate, but that's not going to take away from the fact that somebody was 6'3", 220 pounds, a Roma Dunze, an absolutely type of freak, and you bank on freaks. That is, when you're a betting person, where you're a wagering person, you bet on more of the sure bets. The Lad McConkeys of the world are outstanding, but there are some of them that don't always necessarily make it. So you bank on a number one top shelf guys, and it's just kind of the way it goes. But the most important thing look, I was a wide receiver in college. It's a position I love to talk about endlessly. It is so much about fit. If this guy looks great on tape, but he ain't running the routes that you specify as your team for successful routes, then leave the kid alone. Let somebody else take him. That is the biggest thing. Find the receivers that fit what you do. But you also get that awkward situation where you're getting drafted by a regime, and guess what? They're gone within a year. So now you're a tough guy in a tough spot. There's a lot that goes into it. But, guys who score touchdowns make money in the NFL, and it's just the way it goes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes. The short answer is yes. And just on a side note, your comment about 30, that is a clippable clip, and I really do hope that we block that out. That was freaking amazing. Good for you. Now, Alex, I'm gonna throw over to you because I think the Browns obviously and Broncos have some additional ties that I think that Jeff and I are gonna probably want to get into. So over to the Chiefs when you guys face the Browns. I really can't stress this enough. The Browns have elevated their team over the last several years, and they've continued to keep themselves elevated. Where do you think your Chiefs are going to stack up against the Browns, and what are your questions pertaining to your team versus the Browns?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, Browns play Chiefs, or Chiefs play at Browns week 15. So we've got a good amount of time and a good amount of things that can happen or not happen before we get to that matchup to really know. But I mean, I will say this: we all know the Browns have an elite defense. I mean, I know that I rode them to my fantasy championship last year. So, Myles Garrett is a dog, and everyone else around him are dogs, and they've only added to that with more athletes such as Devin Bush. They got Juan Thornhill, Chief safety. They're just, a bunch of athletes that fly around. So, if that's full steam ahead week 15, that might be one of the toughest defensive matchups that the Chiefs have the whole season. Outside of that's probably it, because outside of maybe the Ravens week 1, but week 1's kind of a crapshoot because it's first game of the year. Guys aren't fully tuned in. So, that's probably the toughest defensive matchup. And, with everything else you've talked about, if the offense stays healthy, like it should be a pretty good scripted, championship bout, so to speak, if Deshaun Watson's fully peaked in week 15. I'm not going to act like the Chiefs aren't good, so I can't, expect them to really take a step back from what they've been doing the past 8 years. But anticipate this to be a pretty good matchup. So I guess just saying all that and how far out it is, my biggest question, outside of health and, Deshaun Watson may be fulfilling a little more of staying healthy and fulfilling some of his contract. Who's the other player that you think needs to take a elevated step up, so to speak, whether it's offense or defense to, get, because obviously competitive team. So get them more into that AFC North championship hump, higher playoff seed.
I think the thing for the Browns is probably on the offensive side of the ball, and it makes sense. You traded for him, you extended him right away. I think the Browns think Jerry Jeudy has 75 reception, 80 reception potential. And look, David Njoku was fantastic. Jerome Ford, at this point in his career, is probably a better receiving running back than he is maybe running the ball. But a lot of that had to do with the Browns' offensive line issues last year. There were a lot of revolving doors. Joe Bitonio was hurt. Wyatt Teller, gets dinged up, and he's not the same player that he always necessarily is. You bring in Naheem Hines. Everybody knows that is basically a guy that's only going to be there for returns. He's going to be a guy that's going to try to help out in the passing game. But, they love what they have in David Njoku. Amari Cooper, they think they have yet going to get a complimentary year from what they've got in the first 2 years. They need somebody to step up and be that wide receiver too. And I truly believe, and you have to believe with the extension they gave him, that is their belief with Jerry Jeudy, and then they can sprinkle in the other guys after that. But Deshaun Watson is probably the most important person to the Browns' success this year.
Yeah.
But to answer this question, it's probably Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, it's probably I'd probably say outside looking in that'd be it. Yeah, because they need that Robin, so to speak. I also have seen some rumors circulating a potential moving Amari for Brandon Ayuk. I'd be curious if you view that as.
But if Amari Cooper wants more money and he wants more than $20 million, and the thing with this is it's a neat little thing to speculate, but where are the 49ers on this? So we move Brandon Ayuk. We got a guy that's older, a guy who still wants more money. If we were going to pay, we would probably play Brandon Ayuk. The Browns have draft picks again, but look, if you're the Browns, it seems like a really no-lose situation. You could probably make that work, but if you're San Francisco, what are you signing up for? That's just the one I don't see. And there's a lot of there's a lot of rumors you might go to Pittsburgh. Well, you don't make a move just because your division opponent might trade for the guy. It's just not the way it works. Nor will San Francisco just say we'll take Amari Cooper for 1 year. You know what? We'll just pay Brandon Ayuk what we think what he thinks he deserves.
Yeah, Ayuk is everything I'm reading about him in Northern California. It's got to be at least 30. Is what kind of what's been floating out there.
Ain't nobody giving him that.
I wouldn't give him that, but that's kind of what I've been reading.
Well, see, Ayuk's problem is Ayuk is trying to play on the if I got the same targets those guys got. And look, if you look at it from a percentage standpoint, if I got Justin Jefferson targets, my production would be similar to him. And yes, he's not necessarily wrong, but until you start catching 130 passes a season in the NFL, nobody's going to pay you like you're somebody who's catching 130 passes in the NFL.
Especially if you're an older guy on top of that.
Well, no, what Ayuk needs to do is he needs to understand that he needs a prove-it year. And he needs to, and I don't mean that in such a negative sense. I mean that in a, he needs
I agree
to
with
go,
you in the fact that, no, Christian McCaffrey makes the big plays. George Kittle, when the money is on the line, it seems it's Debo, it seems it's Kittle, it seems it's McCaffrey. But then you look, and Brandon Ayuk caught 88 passes for 1,250 yards and 9 touchdowns. But the touchdowns you remember from the 49ers are McCaffrey, Kittle, Debo. But you know what? That doesn't change the way Brandon Ayuk and his camper negotiate. My stats are my stats. It doesn't matter when they came.
But look at Ayuk in the playoffs. Alex may know this. How many passes did Ayuk catch against your team? 3.
Yeah.
So you got to show up.
Right, but the point is Ayuk needs to get a prove-it deal. He needs to go to a team that has a decent quarterback where he's willing to pay for maybe quite a bit less than he thinks he's actually worth, where he can then show the market or show that team that he is worth. First off, I don't think he's ever going to be worth $30 million, but
no.
But where he believes that he's shown that he's worth in that ballpark. And The problem is with Ayuk is that I actually think that I don't want to say bluffing is the right word, but I think that he doesn't believe that he can actually attain the thing. He's just trying to capitalize, Jeff, as you said earlier, on the hot wide receiver market right now. He's looking at that saying, I want my Brinks truck too. And if I could try to force this team to kind of do the thing and get the thing and all that kind of stuff, then I will. And I think that's really what he's trying to do at the moment. I think it's going to ultimately fail. And I think in addition to that, I actually think that it's going to actually hinder him in the long term, because other NFL teams are going to look at that and say, "Oh, you're the diva guy. You're the give me my money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And I think that'll actually come back and hurt him. And I also think that
Tidwell.
Right. And I also think that the Browns have shown that they are a much smarter organization than that. Although, Jeff, you and I are going to have a few words on Jerry Jeudy, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. Because, I obviously have my own take on Jeudy. So my biggest question to the Browns is, what are your biggest moves that you've made on the offensive line in terms of allowing yourself to be versatile enough to both run and pass? And what I mean by that is you have typically done a very good job at running the ball. What have you done to allow yourself to be versatile to do both run and pass? Because most offensive lines are typically good at one and not as good at the other.
Even when the Browns were poor last year, they threw for 4,000 yards with 5 different quarterbacks. So their offensive line, the only question is health. There are no changes. This has been the same offensive line the entire regime to this point. Jedrick Wills, Joe Bitonio. This will be Ethan Posick's 3rd season as a center for this team. Wyatt Teller's been here the entire time. Jack Conklin was the first free agent they signed. And when Jack Conklin went down early in the season, he stepped into Juwan Jones, which turned out to be an absolute steal of a pick in the 4th round. I think one of the biggest issues the Browns are going to have is finding out who is basically the starting 5. Because ideally, you say Jack Conklin is your starting right tackle. But even if Jack Conklin returns to full health, you're looking over, peeking at the corner, like, well, the kid we got is really, really good. So how do we just tell somebody that played so well last year, you don't play? So their offensive line, I mean, that's the only question is health. And look, there are some questions as far as the age of it, but Jedrick Wills is in year 5. He's been healthy most of his career. Joel, you hope that with that little bit of an injury last year, it wasn't age, it just truly was an injury. But Posick's been outstanding since he's been here. Wyatt Teller, as long as the calf doesn't creep up and give him issues, he's shown he's been an all-pro caliber player. Jack Conklin has been an all-pro caliber player. And Juwan Jones was an all-rookie performer last year. The offensive line is one of the fewest questions there is in regards to the Cleveland Browns.
So assuming I'm reading this right, we play you either week 12 or 13. I'm struggling here figuring out where the bye weeks fit in on the schedule. So like Alex, we slot fairly late in the season in terms of when we play the Browns, which, I mean, there is a laundry list of things that happen in 12 to 13 weeks of football in the NFL season. To your point, question marks in health, who shows out, who doesn't. Where I'm going with this is, obviously you have a wide receiver who you obtained from my team in Jerry Jeudy. I have not been shy and actually been rather direct in terms of my indifference upon him leaving my team. I don't think it's any secret that he has pretty good footwork, generally speaking. However, if you were to listen to Jeudy, even in his own words, as he's communicated to the press, he sometimes, and by sometimes I mean regularly, takes too long to kind of get to the spot. I have no other way of putting it. And do you think that will cause a problem for you, for somebody who, on the flip side of everything, also shrugs off and or is say, slightly more aggressive when it comes to critique?
Well, the thing, and look, I'm going to be honest with you, I was calling for Jerry Jeudy to be a Cleveland Brown for about 18, 19 months. But my question is now when we talk about wide receivers and fits, you invest a very high selection in a wide receiver. And what did you have to back it up? Where are the quarterbacks that Jerry Jeudy played with when he was with the Denver Broncos? Are they in Denver? I mean, and look, I'm not picking on you, but this is my point about fit. Look, it's got to be, there's a two to tango effect to this. And look,
Sure.
the Cleveland Browns 2 years ago in the offseason called the Dallas Cowboys, sent them a 5th-round pick, and brought Amari Cooper to town. And that worked out with Amari Cooper playing with a litany of quarterbacks. A litany, six different quarterbacks he played with in 2 seasons. So, granted, with the extension, it's a little bit different because they already gave him the extension, so they're banking on it. They most certainly are. But, you look at the Alabama wide receivers, they all seem to have panned out. So sometimes you question whether or not it's the fit. But, you can't just, and it's one thing if a team is successful and you can say, all right, well, that's not. But when things didn't necessarily go well, it's really difficult to point blame. Because obviously if you didn't do well, there's 1, 2, 3, there's 4, 5, 6 different factors. If you were a 10-17, that probably could have been a 13 in whatever team, then you can say, well, there was a shortcoming, pass rush, or, pass blocking was a short rush, or couldn't run. It's really difficult to point blame onto a single player when a team just hasn't been successful. The Denver situation obviously was just a whole weird one. The organization wanted this guy, then they wanted this coach, and that guy didn't want the quarter. So none of it really worked out for anybody. And basically you were just spinning your tires in the mud for the time being. Look, I'm thankful with Jerry Jeudy. Was I ready for the extension? Maybe not. I would have rather played it out this year. But I have some pretty good confidence, I think, in Jerry Jeudy this year. Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper came here, had 2 great seasons. Elijah Moore came here, had the best season of his career. So I got to think that maybe this is a player going, hopefully, to what I think is a system that's going to get better production out of him.
I'm in a similar position to what you just said there. There's no issue I have with the Browns trading for Jerry Jeudy. I think that is a flyer you take. I think you obtain him in the offseason. You do the thing. Like, you get the guy that you think works for your team, and that I agree with. Where I'm head scratching, though, is the extension component of it. I understand that the wide receiver market, for whatever reason, has ballooned, much to my head scratch, like to my comments earlier. I don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me. But he has been what I would deem as a middling wide receiver, which could be as a result of quarterbacks, sure. But I also believe we've seen some challenges with Jeudy, and this is kind of where my second question comes, just directly relating to Jeudy and the Cleveland Browns. Jerry Jeudy is not a wide receiver that has traditionally done well in catching balls in, we'll call it traffic or contested catches. He has done okay, but not great. Within your division, and this is, I think, where I'm really kind of going with this, you're a very gritty division that is predicated on a lot of running of the football. I'm from Canada. I'm the only Canadian on the podcast. Winter is awesome. I love cold weather. I would not live anywhere else. However, with the exception of Florida, I love Florida. But
wait, that's
no cold weather there.
Look, I never said the two aligned. I just said I love Florida. However, when I look at what Jeudy has done with my Denver Broncos, I've had a very close look on him, and I am, and Jeff, just to be clear, I may be the most critical Denver Broncos fan you're ever going to meet. I am the least orange and blue glasses Denver Broncos fan ever, I think. Like, there's very few that are like me that are in my vein. And there's a reason why the rest of the panel here is kind of laughing, is because they know full well that I'm actually not lying. Which is, I have seen Jeudy drop wide open passes in the middle of the field. And I've also seen Jeudy miss passes because he thinks he's going to get hit and he doesn't. And my concern with him moving to the AFC North isn't that he's not a talented wide receiver, because I actually think he is. I actually think that Judy's issue is that he gets in his own head. And do you think that your team may look back on the Jeudy extension in short order and regret it? And as a secondary question as well, what negative impact might that have for your team going forward, given the talent that you have on the defensive side of the ball? And will that potentially prevent you from signing any of those guys as a result of doing what you did with Jerry?
Well, first things first, there was a 5-week stretch last year where nobody dropped more footballs than the Cleveland Browns. It happens. Drops are look, every team sees it. The drops are, it's a contagious thing. One guy drops the ball, the next thing you know, the other. It's just something. It's it's just like a virus. It's a cold, whatever. It's something that happens. Jerry Jeudy 2 years ago caught 67 passes for almost 1,000 yards. If that's his baseline for the Browns, guess what? The extension after everybody else got extended is totally within lines. It's totally within merit of wide receivers are getting paid. They'll more than okay sign with it. But the thing is, the Browns are never out of anything. Nothing is ever going to cost them. They handed Deshaun Watson $235 million guaranteed. And what has it changed? It has not cost them one player. It has not cost them one extension. We roll it over if we have to. You look at Jimmy Haslam and say, hey, Mr. Billionaire, can you eat $25 million so I can get you a new edge rusher? And, okay, just roll it on over. And, how many years did we talk about the New Orleans Saints and they're kicking the can down the road? Yeah, they did that for about 12 years before they finally said, you know what, we're just going to pull back the purse strings 1 year, just 1 year, and then we'll be back in business. It's not going to hurt the Browns. It's an analytic regime. They know exactly what they're doing. And keep in mind, Jerry Jeudy is in year 5. There is no extension for Amari Cooper. So I'm not saying they're nearly the same player, but if Amari Cooper doesn't come back, there's the Jerry Jeudy money right there. Done. It's very, very quick. Jedrick Wills this year is $16 million on the last year of his rookie deal, his fifth year of his rookie deal, rather. He most likely ain't going to be back, so there's $16 million there. It is just so quick and easy to do this. And, the Browns are, they do this. It's analytics. It's nerds. It's Ivy League guys.
Moneyball.
Like they talk about this stuff like the rest of us would talk about our fantasy teams. Like they talk about how to turn over. Hey, how can we turn over $22 million tomorrow if we had to? Like that's the way guys like this like do things.
You're like, Andrew, this is Kevin.
We might have to change our long snapper, but I can save us $22 million. Okay, done.
Jeff, but by that same logic, though, saying that you didn't, like you paying Deshaun didn't really hurt you guys in the long run, couldn't you also, by that same logic, say, well, we could have just kept Baker, signed him to a much less expensive contract, and we saw how Baker balled out with receivers in Tampa Bay, and they don't even have that good of an O-line.
How did Baker do the year previously in Carolina? Look,
okay, but that's Carolina. Oh, come on, that's Carolina. Carolina has probably the worst roster in the league right now.
Carolina has been an absolute dumpster fire
yes.
for a good number of years now. I mean,
yes, and what did Tampa pay him to come play for him before he played well for them? How long was the line? When did Baker sign? It wasn't like day one of free agency where they're like, oh my God, we got Baker Mayfield.
It was
and I will never, ever have an issue with Baker. But the problem there was at that point it had become personal. And you got to keep in mind, he was not Stefanski and Barry's guy. So when that year fell apart and his shoulder was all busted up, they had to say, look, we got to base it on what we've seen. And what we've seen was okay. And look, at the time, regardless of the off-field stuff, you had one of the most successful quarterbacks in the NFL available in trade. It came with certainly a lot of red tape. It certainly cost a lot. But I don't think anybody at that point in time was saying, no, I'm going to take Baker Mayfield over Deshaun Watson. Nobody was going to say that.
I don't think they were saying that, but I think it was the whole thing of he was your number 1 overall draft pick. He won
He
you
was
your
not
first playoff
their
game.
number 1 overall draft pick. That is the
Right,
biggest
but
key. But again, it's situation, it's fit. Now, like Andrew Barry's saying, I didn't draft this guy 1 overall, but I am basically putting my job, my family on the line for this guy. And look, I'm sure Jimmy Haslam was in the background going, just make it happen. Go get him, get down to Houston and get him here. But you do have to say, I'm going to put my reputation, I'm going to put my job on the line for the guy that wasn't essentially my guy. And every NFL general manager has to do it. They absolutely do. You do not get Bill Belichick and Tom Brady's. It just does not work that way. It just doesn't.
Jeff, the one thing I will agree with you with is that there is a comfort level piece that comes with certain quarterbacks. And so when they're drafted by a team, they feel a certain comfort level that they can, get away with stuff. I have no other way of putting it. And when you saw the draft initially take place, you saw a few things that were perhaps a little popping of the collar. I have no other way of putting it. And I think that when you have a quarterback of Baker's caliber who is expecting to start, wanting to start, believes he can start, I think at some point you have to recognize that maybe the regime has changed. However, the quarterback themselves may need a change of scenery because they have an incorrect mindset to fit the new direction of the team, because they're used to the old regime for so many years that they need to go away. And if I'm going to point to a guy that I think that might fit that same mold as Baker did with the Browns, that would be Ryan Tannehill. And I actually think that is a great analogous example between the two. Look at those two comparatively. And I think that Baker is a great example of a similar quarterback to Tannehill, which is, I don't think anyone's denying that either quarterback is talented or good enough to play at the NFL level. I actually just think that a change in scenery was required in order for them to succeed. And I think both quarterbacks are in the same mold, and I think that's a fair approach.
I mean, this is something. I mean, look, at this point in time, we're talking about 2 quarterbacks that have nothing to do with the AFC North. I don't even know if they have anything to do with the AFC West. Look, I'm happy for Baker. Like, his time here was good, but it just, the way it ended and him being injured and going out there and just doing everything he could, and it just wasn't enough. And look, for 2018, the rookie year, it was a magical ride. The 2020 going to the playoffs, but it just came to this crashing halt in 2021, and it almost started good. Obviously, Chiefs guy here knows it almost started good. He was a player or two away from winning Week 1 in Kansas City, but it just really, really fell apart from there. And it just doesn't always work, obviously. And we see the way the top quarterbacks drafted every year now. You go back 2-3 years from now, I mean, Zach Wilson's playing for you. I mean, just the way this goes, and I think the weirdest thing is that these franchises are just so ready to gamble everything on a number 2, a number 3, a number 4 overall pick, and then 2 years later say, screw it, kid sucks, we'll move on.
Do it again.
Yeah. Yep. Well, if you're lucky, you get to make that decision twice. Yep. If you're lucky, you get to make that decision twice. A lot of guys don't get to go.
Right. So, Jeff, I have a big question just for the entire division here. I just want to be mindful of time here for you as well, which is, what is the number one weakness you think of your team?
I'm not sure if it's necessarily weakness. Look, the biggest question mark with the Cleveland Browns is Deshaun Watson. You have a quarterback that is paid to play like a top 10 player. You've seen bits and pieces of him for 2 seasons. Year 1, you kind of understood that, there was a lot of time missed, a full year. Then the first 11 weeks, you saw a little bit. Last year, I think just as far, for guys like me, when you were just starting to say, all right, I think we're where we need to be. 4-1, closing out big games, a Cincinnati Bengal game. At week 2, the Titans, week 3, the Titans, you put them away, late, and everything looked good. And then you had that drive against the Ravens. And then all of a sudden, it was like, well, where are we now? Because it's almost going to be 10 months before he actually takes a legitimate snap for the Cleveland Browns again. That's it. I mean, Nick Chubb coming back. But look, Jerome Ford gets his knocks. Jerome Ford had over 1,200 yards last year, had over double-digit touchdowns. If anybody said Nick Chubb's going to go down week 2, but Jerome Ford's going to give you 1,200 and double-digit touchdowns, everybody would have said, like, all right, sure, big guy. Okay, sure. You filled that hole. And with Deshaun being out, you filled that hole with other quarterbacks. David Njoku had the best season of his career. Amari Cooper doubled down on the year he had before. Myles Garrett, not only has been good for all these years, he was so good he was Defensive Player of the Year. But you've got to get, and it doesn't have to be Josh Allen play. It doesn't have to be Lamar Jackson. It doesn't have to be Patrick Mahomes. He does not have to be mentioned with those names. He has to be mentioned in the fact that you can't say his completion percentage is too low. You can't say he's turning the ball over too much. If he just plays top 10, top 12, top 13 quarterback level, that should be honestly enough to win the AFC North.
And actually, Jeff, I have a question, actually two-parter. So how do you see, since we all play against your team, what do you think your overall win-loss record versus the AFC West, and how about your overall win-loss against the NFC North?
NFC North. The NFC North is tricky because the Browns have their first 3 AFC North games at home earlier in the season. Their final 3 AFC North games are later in the season on the road. So we talk about these variables and who's in, who's out. That's really, really a difficult road. The Browns had a little bit more friendly schedule last year, but the last 3 games of their AFC North schedule are all on the road, and it's later on in the season. And look, there's a lot to be said there.
That's a gauntlet.
Yep. It is. It is. And they have, obviously, the Chiefs are in there as well. I think there's like one snoozer within that as, it's a rough close, but, when you're a team that went, 11 and 6, and obviously the way they did last year, it's not always going to favor you. One year you're good, and the next year your schedule is tougher. It makes total sense in the world. Obviously, I'm certainly concerned about the Kansas City Chiefs. Vegas, I think Vegas is probably, maybe a year away. I think the Chargers are on 2 good things. Anybody who wants to joke about Jim Harbaugh, look at Jim Harbaugh, look at his brother, look at his father. All these guys do is win. It doesn't matter where they are. The Chargers are going to win. It may not necessarily be in 2024 where we're talking playoffs, which may not be the worst thing because they're still trying to figure out what works best and getting the correct weapons for Justin Herbert. It's a huge, huge question there. The Broncos, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Pryor. I am. I'm a fan. But, it's just getting it all online. And, when you look at what the quarterback Denver selected, did they draft their guy or did they draft the guy that was left to draft? And it's tough because, when you have a top-heavy quarterback draft, nobody's going to move around. Nobody else is going to give each other So, but you also got to understand, I still believe if Dorian Thompson-Robinson finished that game in Denver last year, the Browns win.
Jeff, you got a fan in me. I heard everything I needed to hear. You could say that you're going to crush us this year, and I'll be fine with it.
I do got to bounce, though, fellas. Everybody, good luck. Obviously, keep hustling, man. It's always fun chatting up with the fellas. All right.
Appreciate it, Jeff.
Ladies and gentlemen, Locked On Browns is where you can find Jeff and all of his content. Go ahead and follow that. Subscribe to that channel. Get those details there. Jeff is a great fan, great fan of the show, friend of the show.
And Jeff.
Yeah, just a great dude all around. Just having a guy that has that degree of knowledge on the team to be able to bring him in like that is such a huge, just huge.
They do got a pretty rough. I'm kind of bummed he got off because week 14 through 18 is a pretty tough stretch for him. So talking Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Cincy, Miami, Baltimore. That is
rough.
Yeah.
Are they in Miami for that game?
No, in Cleveland.
Okay. They're good. It's Tua in the cold, so they'll be fine.
True, I guess. Yeah, that's probably why he's not
worried
about it.
I mean, at the end of the day, that is a rough schedule.
Yeah,
that's brutal.
Yeah, the last 5 games of the season are all
3 divisional road games.
Pretty much all the deep playoff runners from the year before, and then Joe Burrow if healthy. So
Yeah, after getting beat up all year and making that. Ooh.
yeah.
So,
that
ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be continuing our AFC North kind of gauntlet shows on the Wild Wild West podcast here. We're going to be digging into the Steelers hopefully next week.
Steelers.
And I'm aiming to have the Ravens hopefully on the week after, and then we're going to be going in right in line to going into the Bengals hopefully the week after that. That is honestly going to be a division that I think our overall division will struggle with. I mean, they are just simply built different. They just are, and the challenge is that your team is wanting to be built around winning your division. And so you're going to be aiming towards, the Broncos beating the Chargers, the Raiders and the Chiefs and all that sort of thing. Obviously the Broncos finally beat the Chiefs last year again in a number of years. And we've kind of split or not done well against the Raiders, but we've split
8 in a row.
And I think that we're going to be, and I think
what was that, Jack? I didn't hear that.
Oh, 8 in a row.
Right. And I think this year is going to be the year that gets broken. I think that's in large part because of Sean Payton. I'm just being honest. Having a head coach that is seasoned and disciplined and all that sort of I just think that this year we'll split with the Raiders. I don't think we're going to sweep the Raiders or any team in the division. I think this is a stepping stone for the Broncos where you have to start incrementally getting better against the division. And you need to get out of really bad contracts. And so like I was trying to hint at with Jeff there when he was here, the Browns have the potential of putting themselves in a tough spot if they start signing guys prior to seeing their production, because you can start getting into what the Broncos got into, which was doing the same thing. We saw Russell Wilson. We've seen the offensive line guys. We've seen all that kind of stuff. And yes, salary cap is, we'll call it flexible. However,
call it flexible. So I wish Jeff was still on because I had another question going wide receivers. Since he said Amari Cooper is number one, but they're probably not going to extend him. How comfortable would he feel with Jerry Jeudy being number one? Because if Jerry Jeudy was my number one, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but there's not a lot of fear in that.
No.
Sorry, who?
It's about zero fear.
Who?
Just a jab.
Jerry Jeudy being. So my question was, I wish Jeff was on. Is that okay? Who? Okay, I got you.
Yeah,
he's an owl. He's an owl. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do think there is some concern with that, and also, I mean, if you look, I'm pretty sure they paid Deshaun Watson before he took a snap for him too. So I mean, the last two scenarios of which they made a move for someone and then gave him an extension could potentially, kind of blow up in their face, but we'll see.
Well, I don't agree with that. I mean, Deshaun Watson was, despite what everyone wants to talk about Watson in general, which, fair enough, he was an incredibly productive quarterback. I mean,
yeah, but so was Russell Wilson, Rich, and I'm sure you regret your team paying him before he took a snap for you. So that's all I'm saying. No. Let him put your uniform on and take reps and then pay him. Don't base it off of the resume.
That's actually not true. And so Russell Wilson had production in certain years of his career with a certain team and style around him. However, if you're going to be intellectually honest, and I'm choosing my words carefully, Alex, and actually assess the situation based on stats that are outside of, what quarterbacks try to pump up. Russ was not great the last couple of years he was in Seattle. No. He just wasn't. And that's in part, and that's in part because he needs about 4 phone books to see over his offensive line. Right? Like, the dude's a midget. He just is. I'm really not trying to be like aggressively critical of a guy who has won a Super Bowl. I'm just simply being honest, which is when the offensive lineman, as the shortest of them, is 6'4", and your quarterback is 5'10" on a tall day with stilts. That's a problem, right? Like that's an issue. Like that is a huge height differential between A and B. And on the flip side, the defensive linemen, which are on the other side of the ball, they're matching the same height and size, if not being bigger than the offensive linemen. So you have to look at things from an objective standpoint. The general rule is you want a dude who's like 6'2" to 6'4", maybe 6'5" at quarterback. And anything shorter than that is a risk. It just is. Even Kyler Murray, when he first came into the NFL, had some great plays.
He had a great season. One great season.
Yeah. Now, though, the league has figured him out, and the dude can't see over crap because he's 5'7" on a good day. Right? Like, that's a problem. Like that's a huge problem. And like, here's an example, right? Is when you're playing any contact sport, and obviously the sport that I know best is rugby, just because that's what I came up through. Alex, obviously, the collegiate level of football because that's what you came up through. In terms of height and size, if you had an offensive lineman who was 150 pounds, how well do you think they do?
It depends what their back squat is, but probably not good.
Right. Okay.
They're going to have a lot of heart, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tremendous heart. Good
heart.
for you. Man, you put so much effort into that. Good for you.
Rudy.
Yeah. Right. And so, but that's my point, right? Which is, at some point when you're in a physical game and you require height, size, speed, and strength as your 4 pillars to win, unless you're just like an absolute friggin' freak and are like 150 pounds that can bench like 320.
Yeah, double your body weight.
like you're screwed.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're absolutely screwed. And so there's a reason why the best offensive linemen are like 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", and like
6'8".
Right in that 290 to 320 range, right? Is because that's a sweet spot.
Tackles, they can be a little bit taller. Yeah. And they probably should be a little taller.
No, you want them to be taller because you want the wingspan on them in order to be longer as well. And that, again, this is just body proportionality in terms of like, what you want for certain position groups. Like this should not be a secret thing. Like this should not be something that's like, oh my gosh, you figured out like the secret formula. No. There's a reason why there's no 5'10" tight ends that are really good at the NFL.
They're wide receivers.
They're wide receivers. And even then they suck.
Defensive backs.
Yeah, even then they suck. Right? Like there's a reason why certain positions in a general mold just don't work. And look, there's some great flyers. Here's an example. Trindon Holiday from the Denver Broncos.
Yeah. Midget.
The dude was like 5'7" and 135 pounds. He could run
fast.
He could run faster than Tyreek Hill. He was legit that quick. Okay? Like for real, he was that quick. The problem though is that the guy couldn't hold onto the ball. Why? He was like a carny. He had small hands. That was an Austin Powers reference for those.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And
oh my God.
And he fumbled the ball a lot. However, every 10 catches, the dude took it back to the house.
Yeah.
Right? He just did. He was that good. Like he was that good, but he couldn't sustain it. He couldn't go for 5, 10, 15 years. Why? The dude was only a step taller than a midget. Okay, like I have no other way of describing
That's not
it.
an exaggeration.
No, it's not.
He was a very small man.
Yes.
Well, and I think throughout the years, there's always a traditionally undersized player that turns out to somehow be elite. And it may not be because of athletic ability, but just because of work ethic and like
Sure.
knowing
Yep.
what they need to do. Like Wes Welker, Darren Sproles. I mean,
I'd throw Austin Eckler in there for 2 seasons.
I was just about to say that, Robert. I didn't want
2 seasons. Yeah.
I didn't want to disparage your team, but I would
No.
throw him in that same mold.
Regardless,
the one that tops them all, and Cliff Branch. I mean, he reset the whole entire league, and he wasn't a big guy, and he's got a gold jacket.
True.
Yeah, that's true.
Alex, now that our Browns guest is gone, and we've kind of covered the AFC Cleveland Browns side, I'd like to throw over to you to talk about your recent news this week in your team.
Damn it.
Because why not? And I'll be back in just a moment.
It's another weekly segment.
Yeah, here we are again. I can erase the board of days without incident. Back to 0.
God.
But yeah, that was before the show. That's why I thought you already talked about this, but that's what I'm trying to. But yeah, Isaiah Buggs again in the news for criminal issues. He was, I think, 2 weeks ago, had 2 warrants out for, I don't remember the charge, animal cruelty or something like that. That was, he had gotten an attorney, turned himself in. It came out that this was like, they tried to claim it was a witch hunt because he owned some hookah bar at the
I was going to say, is it a bud bar?
I mean, I'm sure there's something going on at the hookah bar. It ain't just smoking hookah. Let's be real. But this incident certainly tops them all. And I think, like I said to you, Robert, pre-show, I mean, this guy, I don't anticipate him being with the Chiefs for that much longer. I'm
surprised he's still on them, honestly, if I'm being for real.
But I think legally with contracts and stuff, like you got to wait for the criminal thing to play itself out, unless it's just like so bad. I mean, I think probably. Well, I mean, I'm not saying. I mean, yeah, I'm sure
it's pretty up there.
Yeah, but you got to let the legal process play itself out.
Yeah.
Because then you get into liability of wrongful termination, XYZ, which, I mean, I'm sure given where this guy was at in his career and what he signed for in a future / practice squad contract, if something like that happened, he would probably be trying to fight for every penny that he could get, because I don't foresee him getting another shot with any team in the NFL.
No.
If he even – I wouldn't be surprised if he has to do some sort of jail time, just because, I mean, he's already got a track record. I haven't dug into it, but I'm sure there's more. And this situation, he allegedly broke into his baby mama's house, dragged her downstairs, and caused some injuries and other things. I don't see how he gets out of that one. And is playing, and I would be shocked if here in the next, probably by the end of this month, maybe early July, he's not released by the Chiefs. And I think that's really just a matter of when and not if. Just like I said, I mean, he wasn't a big time player. Like, they just brought him in. Because he's young. I think he was drafted 2 years ago. But yeah, I mean, it just sucks.
Why he wasn't on
hard to see why he was bouncing around, probably. But it sucks that it's just yet another week of a Chiefs or the same Chiefs player, I guess. I'm not going to act like it's just all of them. Getting into some sort of issue, and you just hope that they let this play out. Probably get him off the team. Let the Rashee Rice situation play out, and let's get focused and get back on track. Like I did say to you though, Robert, at least this is all happening in April, May, June, rather than early
September.
August. Yeah, early September, and really hitting the team a little worse. So
at some point they're going to uncover the White House like they had, during the Cowboys run up in KC.
Yeah.
Man.
Seriously.
I mean, I obviously it's like you said, it's a good thing that it's not like a major player or like a franchise player. Rashee Rice isn't necessarily a franchise player either, but that one still kind of stings a little more because of the season he just had, and he'd pretty much made.
He was certainly a building, a stepping stone.
Yeah. I mean, he had made his clear-cut case for being the number one wide receiver on that team, just depth chart wise, because obviously we know it's Kelsey, but. So that one was a little bit more. This is, like you said, it's like a practice squad player. Somebody's probably not going to be around too much. So I think that's why. I mean, like you said, I know the everything's got to take the proceedings and all that, but you can't help but just hate that it's just another Chiefs play. I mean, I don't want to say another, but a Chiefs player in the news
incident.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for a team that's looking to three-peat, and we had said pretty much since the end of that last Super Bowl that you guys got to stay focused. Like this is you got to go. The entire team has to be, dialed in. This is going to take a team effort. Try to go to be the first franchise to ever three-peat. And then it just seems like it's incident after incident after incident.
I know, dude. I'm aware. All right.
We can't rag on you for much because you just won the Super Bowl. So let us have the little things that we can rag on you for.
Yeah, the little nuggets.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the question that becomes is, all right, you've done well thus far with the distractions. So. You've had teams where you've had one or two players that have had issues. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Bugs is the same dude that had the dog incident, isn't it?
Yeah.
That dude's done.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He was a practice squad guy, and I mean he's done. Once it plays itself out a little more, he's certainly done.
Oh man.
So I guess barbecue chicken.
I guess the problem though is that they haven't cut him yet.
That's what
I was saying. I'm sure it's something just with the just to not get into some sort of wrongful termination or kind of let the legal process play itself out a little more so they don't open themselves up. That's my guess. I mean,
look, Stephen A. Smith has a saying: "Stay off the weed." At some point, this dude needs to stay on the right side of the law.
Hey, Biggie Bronco.
That's why his name is Butts.
That's amazing.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, he's not wrong either.
No, he's not. That's why it's hilarious.
Like he's not wrong. Like this is the thing. Like look.
If I had a dime
Andy Reid is a very big second chance guy. So
you're right. Andy Reid is very big. He is very, very big.
Yeah, in multiple ways. A lot of rings on his finger.
Yeah,
a lot of wins.
A lot of cheeseburgers in that tummy.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Kareem Hunt didn't last very long after his incident.
Yeah, that's because Kareem Hunt lied to him. He said Kareem Hunt didn't know there was a video.
Look,
which
Jack,
I don't know why you would know there was a video in the hotel hallway.
You totally missed the point. You can go out and do the worst crap ever as long as you tell Andy Reid the truth. He's cool with it.
Well, that's kind of.
I didn't know he lied to him.
Yeah, that's kind of oversimplifying it a little bit, but sure.
I just saw the video, so that was enough.
Yeah, no, he told him nothing happened. He told Veach and Reed nothing happened. Then the video came out, and they're like, "Dude,
you're done.
You lied to us." You know? Which I will say, in that situation too, it's always this is just it's a slippery slope a team's on because that I think all happened the same time that the Tyreek and situation with this kid. Yeah. And everyone's like, "Oh, the Chiefs just this classless organization. They don't care what you do as long as you play for them." And so they kind of had to get rid of Hunt. And then the Browns turn around and sign him, and everyone's like, good for the Browns to give Kareem Hunt a second chance. Like, that's so great of them. And so, I feel like in these situations with players, it's it's kind of you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And so I think it's best to just let kind of the process play itself out. So then it's like there's no back and forth of like if they made the right move or not.
I think the main difference with that though is Kareem Hunt was already an established player, and he was kind of his name was already set. Yeah, he was I was gonna say.
I mean, he was like second or third in the NFL in rushing yards.
In rushing, yep, yeah. So he, those first 3 years he was incredible. So I think that's why it was. We saw it with we saw it with Deshaun Watson. If that guy can get a second chance, I mean, really anybody in the league can get a second chance. I mean,
he was just getting a massage.
Yeah.
It just had to happen. Happy endings at the end of it.
He was getting a few massages, Jack, for multiple people. But besides that, I mean, like if you're talented, you could be a piece of shit and you're still gonna get a contract. That's ultimately what it comes down to. This Suggs guy, I mean, he, like you said, he's practiced. No, he's not. So then nobody's gonna be. Rich, were you going crazy on some guys?
You and Biggie just taking down pods left and right.
Excitement in his face.
Oh, it was great. It was fantastic. Awesome. These dudes were like, Russell Wilson, blah 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 blah, and then we're like, he said something, and then they were like, oh, he's a huge Russell Wilson fan, and I stepped in and I was like, and then they're like, yeah, they said nothing the rest of the show. It was great.
Please stand by.
Yeah,
technical difficulty.
Yeah, it's wonderful when, like, here's the thing. It's one thing when you have stats and other things to back up your argument, or even like a good solid kind of like backing for what you're saying. For example, Robert, what you're just saying about Kareem Hunt. Mm-hmm. He had a single incident, and it turned out to be not great, but at the end of the day, not like the worst thing we've ever seen either. And it certainly wasn't. It certainly wasn't as,
which is sad because he like straight Spartan.
That's.
But she did like entice him to do that,
right? Like that's the thing. There's two sides to every story, and it was like. It was not great because like you're an NFL player and you're jacked to crap. And so it's like, for example, I hate to like bring this stuff up, but like I went through a separation recently and in 2022. So it's been almost 2 years now, but so this isn't like that recent, but still recent. And so my lawyer saw me when I walked into his office and he's like, oh, I was like, why are you looking at me like that? He goes, dude, I don't know if you know this. You're kind of a big guy. It's like, okay. And he's like, the most common thing that happens with in separations of divorce is that when their ex is, an imposing human, they basically say that they will accuse you of physical abuse.
Damn.
And he said, and the great thing about it is that, and he was using air quotes. My lawyer is great. He's like, the great thing about that is that they're just banking on you walking into the courtroom in a padded suit. And he's like, so you walk in and you're already like you're already this like 6 foot wide dude walking into the courtroom. And then they're like, here, wear a suit with shoulder pads. That will make you look so less intimidating. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Right. And so, my lawyer basically said from that point forward, you were to record every conversation you've ever had.
Yeah, which is unfortunately kind of where we're at in this day and age.
Correct. And so fast forward to what we're talking about here with Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt was judged based on video evidence with no audio. He was judged with all of the other stuff here. And he was also judged based on the fact that his thighs are about the size of a thoroughbred
Tree
horse.
trunk.
Yeah, exactly. like the dude is jacked.
Yeah. Although
And-
I do think there was a subsequent cell phone video from inside the room that showed the chick was saying some stuff that is not necessarily good.
Yeah, but
No.
Alex, as an attorney, does that really matter? It's all about who laid hands on who. Just kind of like race.
I mean that, and it's also the fact that he is.
It does matter for the thing she would want the most in money from him. Criminally, no, it doesn't really matter. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's up to her to press charges. And if she realizes I'm not getting any money, then I don't want anything to do with this.
Right.
I mean, the same thing happened to Joe Mixon. Like Joe Mixon, the same thing. There's a video of him knocking out a female in like a Pickleman's, but she called him something to make him do that, and it just kind of went away. Because I mean, there's really no civil suit. You can't really invite an assault. You know what I mean? You can't say some provoking thing to get hit and then sue the person because like, oh, they hit me. It just doesn't work that way.
I mean, we'll see how it goes for the rest of it, but I mean, it's just like I said, going back to it. I mean, all that happened with Kareem, and the Chiefs still would have forgave him if he had just told him the truth. So I think that in and of itself kind of just goes to show how the NFL handles things like this. We will ban a guy, or we will suspend a guy 4 games for smoking pot. But if he beats the games, just don't bet on our games, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, yeah, you know,
that would never happen with the Raiders after Blitnikoff's daughter. It's like Mark Davis is all about against women abuse. That he'll never see the Raiders. That would have been a great question for Jeff, and like how Jets fans saw that signing, because Kareem is an amazing running back, and so getting a guy who's amazing is like one thing. It's going to really help your team, and having that duo with Chubb, but having the social aspect and everything else. I'm kind of curious how Jeff would have felt and how like the Cleveland fans felt with that signing. That would have been an interesting question.
I agree, but at the same time though, there's so much about that was narrative driven by that ladies legal team.
Yeah.
That you didn't really get a fair shake at the evidence that was actually there. And look, as a dude, as a bigger guy, I have been brought up by my grandfather and my father. You're like, when you walk into a room and you're bigger than 85% of the people in the room or more, act accordingly. Because people are going to treat you different. Like, it's just a fact. Like, I was literally brought up with that as a narrative. The problem is that I had the benefit of a father. I had the benefit of a grandfather. Like, a lot of these NFL guys, and I think this is something that's very important, which is my dad is perhaps the most blunt individual on the face of this planet. Like, there is no...
I think that's directed to you, Richie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ow.
Light
the candles.
No, I was
dim the light. Let's get.
I was single for about a month after I was separated. Let's just say it didn't last long. So you have to look at the bigger picture. Like truly look at the bigger picture, which is, did Kareem Hunt have a strong father figure growing up? Did he have a strong family unit growing up? Did he have all of these other elements that allowed him to formulate his direction going forward? And if he didn't, then he's probably missing a few elements. So he's got the traditional masculine traits, which is how dare you disrespect me, et cetera, et cetera. But if you didn't have those other elements growing up, it does put you at a disadvantage because you didn't have the benefit of having strong masculine figures in your life to kind of like veer you in the right direction to show you self-control. And that's really the big thing when you are a larger, stronger individual, or even more athletic than most. Like Kareem Hunt is far more athletic than the average male, full stop, period. Like this is not a question. Like this is a fact. And having a strong masculine and male figure in your life will certainly assist you in navigating that path. And I'm proud to be that masculine figure in my son's life, because I think that's an important piece in any young male's life. But I'm also happy to fulfill that role in other less fortunate young males' life in my community, because I think it's important that they know that there's an element of self-control that is required for any male when you walk into a room, because self-confidence is an important thing. And when you're 6'4" and like 240 or 250, like, I'm sorry, my man, you're going to be looked at different. Yeah, like you're going to be looked at different, right? Like it is just a fact. Like there is no, OG or like you're going to be looked at as like a freak. And so, some interesting comments in the chat. We'll just put it that way.
It's getting juicy.
And
something.
It's something, that's for sure. And so when you look at the way that you're treated and as you're approached as a guy and as a male, I think it's important that you understand that there's a strength to your physical strength, and that putting it out there as on display is not always the best approach. And I think you need to learn how to walk away, and I think you need to learn self-control. And someone like Kareem Hunt may never have had that parental or male figure in his life.
Yeah.
So he's got all the physical strength, but none of the
discipline to carry himself.
But none of the discipline or ability to carry himself in a situation like that. And I think that's where a strong father figure or masculine figure would have really gone a long way in his life.
It would have gone a long way if again, I don't know who, what his relationship with his dad, but there's zero tolerance in my mind for, at attacking a woman.
Yeah.
I don't care what she says. You women do that anyways. They're always, they'll bark and try to draw you in. But yeah, you got to have that self-control, and it was on him. If he would have stayed in Kansas City, he would have had some rings. So
I will agree to disagree on that front, which is as a male, you have a tremendous amount of testosterone going through your body. You are going to be. You have to remember he has also been drawn, and let's be real, was an elite and is an elite level athlete in a physical sport, right? Like, I think we can agree to that. Yeah. And if you don't have someone in your life throughout the entirety of your, let's say from the age of 13 to 18 to 20 to 21, in that general range, where you're starting to really get quite strong and your testosterone is going absolutely just bat poop crazy, right? It's a fact. You're going to struggle a great deal with how to control that without having a role model in your life to tell you, stop it and do the right thing.
No, I can't disagree. I'll agree to disagree on that. I agree that it might be more difficult for him, but does it make any of that stuff being an elite athlete super right to do that to another person?
So sadly, Jack, you're in California. And electricity is a challenge.
Not wrong.
We didn't hear anything you just said.
Oh, let me re-say it. I agree to disagree on that. He's like you said, he may not have the parenting. He's a super athlete, strong, but even with that, does those things make it right for him to be able to do what he did
No.
to a woman? So no. So there's no excuse. Zero.
Well, I'm not saying there's an excuse. I'm simply saying
unless she attacked him, then I don't see any excuse.
well,
And some
we
people
don't
would even say,
Verbally doesn't count.
No, I agree. The challenge is that many young men in, we'll call it upbringings without that through line, have been taught to defend themselves, and there may not have been a separation in terms of the sexes. Now, I'm not defending it. I'm not saying that it's appropriate or correct. I'm simply saying that we don't know the upbringing. We don't know what was visually seen in terms of in the home. So, there's all sorts of, external circumstances that could have led to stuff like that. However, I will say we have not heard of anything else since then at all, like at all. And I have to give Kareem some credit for not being in the news again. Now, Bugs, however, I see no excuse. Any normal human who grew up with a normal background is going to know to not abuse animals. Like, I don't care where you grew up. Like that's just crazy to me. Like that's just nuts. Like
the psychopath realm.
Like you have to have a mental issue to say, I'm going to intentionally abuse something that is dependent on me. Right? Like it is one thing to have some, crazy person come up to you and say all sorts of like really bad stuff to you, and then you maybe overreact. That is one thing. And we can agree within a framework, whether or not you're Christian or not, that people deserve some forgiveness when it comes to mistakes that they make. However, I can't fathom anyone understanding or not understanding that an animal that is dependent on you for survival, where you just simply ignore them and kill one of them, like that is a like that takes a different level of human being, in my opinion, because that means that you are ignoring an animal for at least weeks.
Yeah.
And that is that is insane, in my opinion. Like I can't even get myself to a mental state where I can empathize with someone like that. However, as a man, I can't ever fathom myself putting a hands on a woman, simply because, like, from my perspective, it is such an unfair fight.
Yeah.
That I have so many other alternative options, and that's just how I was raised. That, like, there's just no excuse for it. However, some of these NFL players grew up in environments where that was the norm. And I think we need to understand that even though we all might agree that that is wrong, which I certainly do, it does not mean that that's not how these young men were raised and what they saw. And there is actually a disproportionate number of these NFL players that recognize that that is also incorrect. Like, you have to understand that a good majority of the NFL players that have made it to the NFL came from broken homes, came from abusive homes, came from all of these absolutely just horrific backgrounds, and they saw their athletic ability as being the way out. And exactly, as an escape. And I think that too many of us normal folks that grew up in normal households, or at least close to it, don't give that the amount of credit that it deserves, that these NFL players who grew up in abusive households, below poverty line households, et cetera, have been able to rise above what was put in front of them, and have been able to do the right thing at every turn. Because let's just be real. In order to make it to the NFL, you have to be more disciplined than every single one of your peers. And many of these young men have not had those proper guidance and that proper guidance in their life. And I think that is something that most people don't necessarily appreciate.
Well, if you want to give props, let's give Josh Jacob props. He's living in a car with his dad and his siblings, and their water is from a water spigot from a park, and they have to use the bathroom from the park.
I agree.
I mean, look at that guy.
No. There is no part of me that will disagree with that as a general statement, which is Josh Jacobs, even if he doesn't ever measure up to what you or I would see as idealistic in terms of how he lives his life, where he's come from and where he is now is such a huge leap forward. Should be nothing but commended.
Oh, absolutely. Totally respectable.
Nothing but commended by the general population. And I think that is a huge deal. And this is coming from an AFC West rival fan who's looking at a dude who has overcome that. And I think that's important. I think that's a big deal when you have someone like Josh Jacobs, who came from where he came from and has been, by all accounts, actually, a fairly high character person when it comes to how he's interacted with the general public.
Well, some people in Raider Nation are upset because, his contract's an average of $12 million, and that's basically what he got last year. And the Raiders didn't offer anything close. And if you live like that, you don't ever want to live like that. So I have no problems with him, taking that money and go. I mean, if you grew up that way, yeah, you want to make sure you get yours, because you don't ever want to see that again.
Nope.
Yeah.
And
I will never fault a player for going after their money.
No, and
you can't.
And you have to remember, the one
I wish
thing
they'd give me some. Yes.
Well, so Jack, the one thing that the Raiders have not come out and said, to my knowledge, publicly, is if Josh approached them with that contract.
I don't know. Honestly, there hasn't been a lot of talk about it. But
I guess
I'm also wondering what the Raiders, really, what did they offer him? Because I heard stories about Josh and Max Crosby sitting in the parking lot waiting. And waited and waited and waited, and nothing transpired. So I really just wonder about Telesco and really what was presented. All I know is that Josh Jacobs said, I need to take a haircut for a team that has not won.
Right.
That's what he came out and said.
Eric, I have to say, I generally agree with this statement 100%. The only exception I put on this is defending yourself from physical harm. I think that's an important piece to add as a caveat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to college in an area that was one of the worst areas in all of Canada. And I understand that may pale in comparison to some areas that are further south.
Probably one of the nicer places in America.
Yeah. But
really a walk in the park.
But I grew up in an area that was incredibly privileged. I am certainly not going to deny the fact that I had a great upbringing with my parents and my family. However, I went to college in an area that was in probably the second worst area in all of Toronto, which rivals that of many areas in the US. And I often found myself in a protective role when it came to the females that were in my college dormitory. I would offer to walk them places to ensure that they were safe. There was a tremendous amount of gun violence in my area. But at the same time, there was also a tremendous number of young women that were local to that area that were also aggressively violent, likely because of their upbringing, likely because of the area that they grew up in. And I think that as a male, regardless of what you would like to state up front, especially if I'm protecting a innocent female, if I have to step in front of an innocent female to protect them from another female, I will. And I will be unapologetic about doing so.
There is never any. All right. A man should never feel shameful or like less of a man from defending his wife, children, mother, family members, sisters, things like that. And I'm full in agreement with you, Rich. For the most part, I had, my father in my life, but I was for the most part raised by women. My mom, my grandma, my godmother, who's my mom's sister, and my godmother had 2 daughters. So I got like the brunt of it from the adults. And then as, I grew up, I had my little cousins with me, or basically like my little sisters. And you, as a man, you kind of start to develop just that natural, like, you just want to protect them. Like, these are your family, these are your loved ones. And regardless of what threat is opposed to them, you're going to defend them. And that is, I will die on this hill. I will always defend for what's mine. And I don't care who's attacking it.
So, Erica, let me put this in perspective. I was at Walmart the other day, just 2 days ago, and I saw a guy yelling at a young lady who was clearly his significant other just a few days ago. I walked up to the other dude, and I told him to know his role and to stop screaming at the young woman. He was being aggressive, and she was clearly scared. I had no problem doing that. I also happen to know I could take that person physically, so that helped. However, I have no problem with that as an approach, like zero. And I think that that's part of a role as my person in as doing the right thing in the community. And I also think that that's an important piece as just being a productive member of society. I don't believe that people should be made to live in fear. Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of my general approach to things. You can like it or hate it. I don't really care, to be quite honest.
Can we just cut buds right now?
Yeah. So anyway, with regards to the AFC West guys, getting back to football exclusively, we are going to be covering off the AFC North in some extensive nature. Can we collectively agree that we think that might be our toughest division to play against?
Oh, 100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So
all my tweener games are there. My losses and my tweener games are all pretty much, they're all there.
Yeah. I mean, it's the division with the toughest defense.
The Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens are, yeah.
Browns defense elite, Steelers defense pretty elite if healthy.
Bengals offense is elite when Burrow is healthy.
I mean,
so yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I agree. I concur.
Who do you think in that division is the toughest of the bunch?
Ravens.
I think Ravens.
No.
Although I mean I don't know. I think the Ravens only got better.
Oh, they did. I mean, shoot, look at their running back with the new tackle rule. I mean, how are you going to bring that man down?
You're gonna need 3 guys on him.
A gun.
I think the Ravens are a good team, but I think that I think you have a division here between the Browns and the Ravens. I think the Steelers are going to be third, and then I think the Bengals are incredibly dependent on health.
Yeah.
So the Bengals are that wild card in that division, right? Like if Joe Burrow is healthy and doesn't get hurt because the team can't build an offensive line, I think we all know my feelings on the big uglies that are protecting the quarterback. This should not be a question mark on the podcast here. I am all for defensive and offensive line. I think that those are the singular position groups on every team that define the success of the team ultimately. And I think too many teams undervalue those position groups. And I think those that undervalue them ultimately end up not succeeding. However, going back to the AFC North, if the Bengals can start to slowly elevate their offensive line in particular, I think Burrow can be an absolute just incredible quarterback at the NFL level. I mean, the dude is just unbelievable. However, kind of like what we saw with Deshaun Watson, if you don't protect the guy and you don't keep the guy upright and stop him from getting killed, you're done.
You're gonna have a bad time.
Oh yeah, look at the Jets last year. What, second play for Aaron Rodgers?
5 plays.
Exactly.
4, yeah, whatever it was.
Yeah,
exactly.
Good.
Exactly. And
I mean, go on.
Sorry, just to kind of go off on that, which is when you look at what you have with Joe Burrow and you look at what you have with Lamar Jackson, and frankly, as much as people might not like Deshaun Watson, the guy has done some shady crap off the field, but he's done some great stuff on the field. And you have to separate A from B when it comes to Deshaun Watson.
The tough thing with that, though, is Deshaun Watson hasn't shown that level of play in quite some time. And you have to start to wonder, does he have it in him?
Get it back.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, you have to wonder, does he have it in him to begin with? Has he completely lost it? Has this whole off the field issue taken a toll so bad on him that he's
no?
I mean, I think it still remains to be seen.
No. In my opinion, all you need is an offensive line that can block for you for a little bit, and I mean a little bit, like 4 or 5 games.
Well, the Browns had one of the best O-lines in the league last year. That's why they were able to throw in that many quarterbacks, and they were just able to take off and still make the playoffs with them.
Yes, but they still allowed for the mistakes to be made in the earlier stages of the season, A and B kind of stuff, where a guy like Watson, who hadn't played in a couple of years, that's the problem, right? So the issue with Watson is he hadn't played in a year and a half,
right?
Because of the accusations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he came back, and his stats were fracking good. They really were. I'm sorry,
great.
They were. They were fracking good, and so you can love him or hate him, and I can appreciate both for sure, because I'm probably more in the camp of hate him than love him.
Well, it's kind of like what you said before, Richie. Hey, you rub your elbows and your knees on artificial turf, to strengthen your skin. That all that time off, it just makes me wonder, how much effort and preparation, he put in, which led him to get hurt. So,
well, and I think that's a fair comment as well, which is, was his injury because of his time off and therefore his body had become less calloused to getting hurt? Or and this is the flip side of that same coin, right? Which is, or was it just he was trying hard to get back, but he couldn't get back on the field because no team wanted him to play on the field because of the off the field challenges. And I'm attempting to be kind when it comes to describing what took place. So I think both things are potentially true. And you don't know which, you don't know how to separate the wheat from the chaff when it comes to that kind of stuff. If I'm going to be honest. Now,
What the hell
I
is
do-
chaff?
what?
What'd you say?
Chaff.
Separate the what from the what?
You're too young.
I must be.
Oh, in my generation, we still have these things called farmers.
What is
What are
that?
those?
I know.
Right.
I know Farmer John.
You're from California. I understand it's a problem. There's the whole middle part of America that knows exactly what I'm talking about. We'll get to there eventually.
Corn, baby.
Yeah. So
It's all rice land out here in Northern California.
yeah. So, anyways, the point is that when you look at and Robert, I'll do my best to explain this in a
In the post game show.
in a generational manner that allows
Okay.
you to understand what I'm saying.
All right.
Basically, there's a divide between were you really putting the effort in to get yourself back on the field, or were you just letting yourself go knowing that no matter what, you had guaranteed money coming your way? And so separating the wheat from the chaff is effectively a analogous way of saying, the wheat is what we're going after. The chaff is garbage.
Now, are you pulling a Jamarcus Russell or are you pulling a Max Crosby?
Right. Right.
Got it.
Right.
Got it. That
And-
is an analogy I can understand. Jack.
There you go.
Thank
So,
you.
Jack, that's exactly it. Like Jamarcus Russell was like, a dude was too lazy to put the effort in to do the right thing.
You just love
And a
codeine.
Max Crosby is a guy that said, I'm a 5th round pick or a late round pick. Hold my beer. I'm going to kill it.
Jamarcus
Right.
Russell couldn't stop drinking codeine and Sprite. That was his problem.
Right.
And he got
Couldn't
to be
stop eating
330
either.
pounds. He weighed the same as
Right.
his left tackle. He had the same
He
height
could-
and weight
he is.
measurements.
He could have
as
played
his
defensive
offensive
tackle.
line.
Right. So when we look ahead to the NFL level, and kind of gauge what we're looking
Poor
at here.
Andy gets all the strays in this show, dude.
Oh, cool, Kev.
It's pretty hard to miss him with them.
True.
Oh, yeah. Put on Cool Kev's comment.
Oh,
That's
I
funny.
did.
That's funny. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. So that's exactly it. And so when you look ahead to what we're looking at here, which is, is Deshaun Watson going to be more of the same as he was in Houston? Well, his stats certainly showed that he could be. Right? Like, I think too many ignore what his statistics were looking at last year before he got hurt. Like, he wasn't like world beater, but he was certainly a top, 5 or 10?
I'd take him.
And most teams would be like, yes, please.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, most teams like, yeah. And so then you're quite Erica, I think your
Right.
mind has gone a little bit awry.
She's on one.
PG-13.
Trying to get spicy, dude.
What is happening?
Well, Erica, we could go R if you really wanted to.
Oh, no,
I
let's
think Rich is
not.
going to call the show
We
early
need
tonight.
to put on
Yeah.
some music.
Yeah.
For
So
Erica.
Rich, if you want us to back out, man, we're
but the point here is that when you look at Deshaun Watson, he was a top 10 to top 12 quarterback easily.
Yeah, I mean, he threw like 4,500 yards with the Dogwater Texans team. So
Yeah. And no, but I mean, even when you look at him with the Browns,
yeah,
like, he was looking great in that first little bit.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't understand what that would have extrapolated to for the remainder of the season.
Let me ask you a question, Rich. If Brock Purdy was on the Browns instead of Deshaun, paying him what the Niners have to pay him now, which is basically nothing, and the Browns were able to surround him with so much more talent based on the money they were saving, do you think they would be in a better position now?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Or do you think where they're at right now with Deshaun and the current state of their team, they would be better than with Purdy on that rookie deal? Because a lot of people don't think Purdy is like a top quarterback. A lot of people say that he's just carried by that talent.
He is.
So okay, right. So by that same logic, because the Browns have, I would argue, a lot of talent, and they would have tons more if they were able to spend without that Deshaun contract looming over them.
Robert, I'll turn it back to you. Who was in the Super Bowl last year?
I mean, hey,
look at the Niners and KC. So you got the total opposites. You got Patrick Mahomes. You got Purdy. You got one team that has had to give up players, but you have Patrick Mahomes, who, by the way, if the PFF ratings came out today, is the number one player, of course, in the league. And then total shocker.
Wow.
But then you got Purdy that you built up around him. So, I mean, it works both ways. So you can see how it could work either way.
The reason why I say that is because Jeff said
you're comparing A and B, and the reason why I'm saying this is so. For example, Deshaun Watson started off on a crappy team.
Mm-hmm.
The Texans were absolute trash,
dumpster fire franchise.
Like
when
they were
the like, Panthers. What the Panthers are now, they were that.
Panthers today, right? Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet Watson was unilaterally deemed the best player on that team, and it might not have even been close.
Oh, it was. Yeah.
It wasn't close.
No, it was
right?
not. Yeah.
Okay. So knowing that, you saw a guy that took his team and elevated them beyond what they should have been capable of doing because he was that damn good. Purdy is a bit of an invert of Deshaun Watson. Purdy is the exact opposite, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Purdy is a guy that started off good but not great, and then went on that hockey stick curve. And he is now in an upper tier in his development when it comes to quarterbacks.
Right.
He is in that upper echelon based on what he's been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a fact. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I don't see that. I don't see him upper echelon. I see that he is, a guy who doesn't turn the ball over, and he's got all the weapons around him, and just get the ball to your weapons and let them do their thing with an amazing defense.
See, I don't know about that, Cool Kev. I really no. I see personally. I wanted to make this argument when Jeff was here. He was saying if the Browns have a top 10 to 12 quarterback, they would be in contention every year. Like if they took out Watson and they had a top 10 to 12 quarterback, they would be set. Baker is a top 10 to 12 quarterback, and he was last year. So that's why I brought up the question to him of, well, shit, if you can pay Baker what the Bucs are paying him right now, the amount of money you're saving on him and what you're able to surround him, because with that amount of money, you can go out and pretty much sign and trade for any wide receiver you want. They would probably go get T. Higgins, if I'm being honest, because he fits kind of like that Mike Evans mold that Baker loves, and we see that connection blowing up in Tampa.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the Browns really shot themselves in the foot unless this Watson thing pans out. If Watson, can find that Houston, if Watson can find find that Houston talent that he had in there somewhere, and he's able to bring that out consistently, then absolutely the Browns nailed it out of the park. And if he's that this year, the Browns are going to be terrifying, and they might march through that division with that defense and that run game if Watson is playing like that. But on the back half of that, we still haven't seen him play like that. I get he's been injured. I get there's been, other extracurriculars. Yeah, things looming around him. Obviously, the suspension, all that. So I get all that, but I can't help but feel like if they would have stuck with Baker, they would be in a much better position than if they.
I disagree with that. So my comment to that line of reasoning is an individual that feels that they're entitled, which is what I believe Baker felt when he was there, will never succeed. You do not have a quarterback that comes into an organization that mocks the general manager and the owner on a social media post. You will never have a quarterback succeed in that role because they believe that they are bigger than the franchise itself. Now, does that mean that that's where Baker is now? No. I actually think Baker has matured.
I agree.
I actually
believe Caleb Williams. I just wonder, with that kid, I need to own a part of the franchise, and you haven't played one snap yet. Get real.
Caleb Williams is a fool. But my point is this, which is Baker Mayfield had all of the accolades coming out of college. He had all of the, hype coming out of college, and he went to the Cleveland Browns as an undersized quarterback. In my opinion,
it was a walk-on that won the Heisman. Like he just had all the narrative.
Yeah, and in my opinion, he had a humbling moment when it came to the NFL, which is when I played in college, I could beat a defensive lineman who was 6'4". I could outrun a defensive back and a defensive end when I was in college. He came to the NFL and quickly realized that, wow, this sucks. That outside linebacker who is 240 pounds and 6'4" can outrun me every single Sunday.
Blindfolded.
Blindfolded.
Baker kind of remind me of Johnny Manziel coming out with that entitlement.
Yeah. Right. And so, in my opinion, there was a certain confidence at that time that the Browns were looking for in a quarterback, and they mistake confidence with cockiness. And Baker had cockiness, not confidence. I think Deshaun has confidence, but not cockiness.
I think he was stripped of all his cockiness that he
Yeah.
might have been maybe entitled to, based on the play. But
Gone.
that any of that is just gone.
No,
I honestly
but Robert, I can understand your point of view. Like today's Baker, not yesterday's Baker with the Browns.
Mayfield was brought down to nothing.
Yeah.
Mayfield was brought down to a point where it was you either work with this team or you are done.
He was getting rid of the bus.
Or you're going to Carolina.
Yeah, well, I was just about to say, Alex. Everybody thought in the league that this was going to be Baker's last chance in Carolina, and if it didn't work out, he was basically going to be set up to be a career backup for
Tampa.
Oh well, yeah, but then exactly, and then Tampa, he goes to the Rams. He goes to the Rams. He has the game-winning drive against the Raiders.
Yep,
and then
that blew me away.
That was enough to parlay that into a contract with the Bucks, and I mean now he's got a nice little contract that was a 3-year deal, I think, for 100
only $50 million guaranteed, but yeah.
Yeah, but hey, I mean, you know what?
I mean, to get that contract when you were down the path of signing
career
1-year deals with he and Ryan Fitzpatrick, essentially, sign with a new team every year, come in for like a 3-week stretch and
ball out.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know if the Browns would be any better with Baker Mayfield or someone that's cheaper yet efficient than they are now. Because to be honest, like a lot of the Browns hype or their success, in my opinion, is pure speculation until they can stay healthy.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I feel like every year they've been sort of an off-season favorite and certainly have that elixir or lure on paper, but then someone gets hurt, whether it be Chubb or Watson, years before that, I'm sure Baker, I mean, everyone. So we'll just have we'll have to see.
Paper, that's right there. The Chargers.
Yeah. Chargers win the Super Bowl every offseason.
I mean, the Chargers, I look at their lineup, they're stacked. It's injuries.
Yeah, we say this every year with us, though. I mean, I will say finally this season feels at least somewhat different because we have a coach who knows his butthole from a hole in the ground.
Yeah, you're not playing Madden anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we don't have a 9-year-old at the helm controlling this team, so I'm very excited to see what this new regime will look like. I mean, based on the old regime, you can't really do much worse. Giving up a franchise record points to the Raiders with a rookie QB in. So listen, we had to be in the depths of hell to rise again and get Harbaugh and get this team turned around. I'm not going to sit up here and say we're going to absolutely blow everybody away this year, but I will say that I think a lot of teams will be surprised at how tough we play. May not result, I'm not saying we're going to go 12-4 or 12-5, 13-4 or whatever, but I could see us putting together a solid season, scratching and clawing potentially at the playoffs, and then, maybe it just be a case where, it's kind of out of our control. We need some other teams to help us out.
The way that I see it this year is that you have the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Broncos that are all in the clawing match of the playoffs this year.
Yep.
I see the Chiefs being a shoo-in to the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. They're going to shoo in the division again.
I don't see the Raiders. Totally. I don't see the Chiefs being a shoo-in to the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah, no.
Because I think that other teams are countering what the Chiefs are doing. However, what I do see is the health of the division determining what succeeds for the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to do a three-peat, if you would have said that 3 years ago, hey, KC can do a three-peat. Oh man, what are the odds on that? But it can happen. So it could happen. Robert, I do have a question for you though. So it's something, since we haven't been on a show together, and you guys drafted, one of my favorite players from Notre Dame. I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. Actually, got two guys. And Alt. So have they moved Alt to left tackle?
As of now, it hasn't been confirmed. All that's been confirmed is who the 5 starting linemen in, which is everybody we pretty much predicted. Bozeman at center, Pipkins at guard, Slater at tackle, Zion Johnson, and then obviously now Alt. As far as what order they're going to be in, we're not necessarily sure, but again, this is kind of what we've been saying. I feel like they can really yeah, no, honestly, the Chargers at this point is really just like, we need the season. Like there's enough of the off-season hype, enough of the like I'm over all of that. Like we need to see it on tape on the field now. What is Harbaugh gonna, and honestly, it's gonna be week 1, and I feel like what's really gonna tell me this season if Harbaugh is serious or not is how we play against our division. Because every year it's been essentially the same thing. We split 1-1 with the Broncos. We either split 1-1 with the Raiders, or we go 0-2, or sometimes we sweep them. So like the Raiders is like always weird. I feel like I can never predict those games. And then the Chiefs, we always lose 0-2. So it's like our 6 games of our 17 game schedule have almost always been like pretty much predictable. And they've almost always ended in 1-5, 2-4. Like, we've almost, can't remember the last time we finished above 300 in the division, or above 500 in the division. So I think it really comes down to, is everybody buying into this system? Because I think, again, you'll see out of the gate week 1 will.
Sorry, Robert, just real quick. I actually disagree with that comment.
I disagree with this as well. I really don't think we have the best running backs because J.K. Dobbins is an unknown. Gus Edwards is all right, but I mean, I'd be lying.
Cool Kev's a jokester. I talked to Cool Kev in like many different chats. He wasn't saying that as that's a fact. He was just kind of joking about it.
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't tell. There.
Yeah. Cool Kev's a jokester.
He's a cool kid, man. Keeps cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Edward. I haven't read anything about that, about players not buying into the Harbaugh method. From everything I've seen, everybody's been really buying into it, and from all the videos.
Robert, though, here's the thing. Ed or whoever said that, on behalf of the Chargers, and I'm trying not to overstep, Robert.
You're a Charger fan at heart, Rich. We claim
who cares?
That's true.
At the end of the day, I'm going to lump the Chargers and the Broncos in a similar position, which is, not last year for the Broncos, but certainly the years prior. I don't give a crap what people say about the Broncos. And Robert, I'm sure you're in a similar position with the Chargers, which is, the short answer is this: win me games and then you can shut up.
Yep.
And sorry, more importantly, win me a lot of games and then I'll shut up.
Oh, if I'll say this, okay? If Harbaugh, and this is obviously the biggest if imaginable, if Harbaugh brings a championship to this team, the cursed fucking Chargers of the last decade plus, 2 decades plus, he should get a statue in front of SoFi like immediately.
Wait, when you say championship, are you saying AFC championship or Super Bowl championship?
No, Super Bowl.
Then it's going to break the curse of all Charger history because they don't have one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it would bring. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't care about no AFC championship games. I obviously want to.
It's like the curse of the Bambino.
Yeah, but we don't have no Bambino. We just have the curse of us. I don't even know what the curse is or what burial ground Qualcomm was built on top of, but I don't know why Oh yeah, what was it called?
It's the curse of Schottenheimer, dude.
Yeah,
no,
it really is.
It really is. You guys selected a quarterback who spread his seed rather than spreading Super Bowls.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, at least he was responsible
Unless
with it.
Full circle, one of those kids ends up being the next quarterback to do.
Yeah.
Right. Now, you could go, as Alex said, in a full almost 180, which is Phillip Rivers.
Well, he's got 8 kids, so who knows?
9, I think.
Oh, 9.
Yeah.
He's left
9,
one out.
And Jack, that is as of today's numbers. Phillip Rivers is still in.
Give it 9 months, we'll find out.
Yeah,
give exactly. It like 3 months.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll go from there. But when you look at what the Chargers are capable of, I mean, you have got a quarterback who has been more successful.
Jesus Christ, Cool Kev.
Cool Kev, the answer is
You're
no.
not wrong.
No, Cool Kev, the answer is no. He has simply just been a procreation king. Not that. So we'll just go from there.
Ooh, this is a great question.
That's a great question. That is really great.
Ed already knows my answer.
I actually think Denver is probably first, but I think that the
damn, really?
Yeah, I do.
Rich, I take back my Chargers fandom, honorary fandom.
Yeah. But I think the Chargers are second, and I think the Raiders are still trying to work out the ebbs and flows. And the reason why I say that is there is very few franchises that have won a Super Bowl without a top tier quarterback selected in the upper tiers of the NFL draft.
Which is why I find it funny you put the Broncos in front of the Chargers when the Chargers.
Well, I think it's kind of funny that either one of you putting your teams in front of the Raiders. I look at Baltimore. So let me ask a different question. Let me ask a question. Out of all the teams, double Super Bowls over here. Out of all the teams, which team do you fear the most? Out of all these three teams.
Out of these three?
Oh, I already know this answer.
I mean, it's always tough, the AFC West, because they're always close. I mean, you kind of have to fear them all equally. And I mean, I think.
Oh, don't be politically correct.
I'm not trying. I'm just
kidding.
I'm just saying. I think that the Raiders probably are the more complete team, just because Broncos, we don't know what they're doing with QB and how they kind of the retool, like coming into this season, how that's going to be. Same thing with the Chargers with Harbaugh and kind of changing. So I think the Raiders right now are in a better, more consistent position from where they were last offseason to transition into this one.
I'd argue they're not, because they just lost their leading rusher. They don't have a set QB. And I mean, you're banking so heavily on that defense to bail you out of games, but you can't run the ball. And you don't know if you're going to be able to consistently throw the ball. We've seen Gardner Minshew be a great backup QB and come into situations in games and keep teams afloat, going that 500, kind of mark in however many games he's playing. But do you think he can consistently do that over the course of a season for the Raiders?
Well, we're gonna find out, because here's like Minshew last year. Okay, he made the Pro Bowl last year, and then we have a young rookie quarterback who was the second best rookie quarterback in the entire NFL. So let him play it out. We'll see who wins. We didn't get what we wanted this year in the way of getting like Jaden Daniels, but that doesn't sound too bad. And then you add, some offensive power in Brock Bowers, who's obviously like a pick that they never even thought would be there. Right. And he's gonna be that guy where he doesn't have to play tight end. He can go over to the slot. He could be your H back, and running that 12 set of personnel. All you need is a game manager. And that's what you were talking about, like with Baker Mayfield before.
No. You need a running back to go with the game manager.
Okay, so let's talk about our running back in Zamir. He had 4 games that he started, and he got over 100 yards a game.
Yeah, but that's easy to say when you don't have any film or tape on the guy and he's coming in fresh. This is why I say the same thing about Antonio Pierce.
This is his second year. There's film on him.
Are we sure that? Oh yeah, there's 4 games you said on him. Are we sure?
No,
that
4 games of starting, but this is his second year playing. So he was a number 2 back.
Jack, whoa! Hold on, Jack. I have a point of order here, which I think is important. When Antonio Pierce took over, what is his record?
5-4.
Great.
5-4, and you had a quarterback coach became the offensive coordinator.
No, I didn't ask for auxiliary comments. I just wanted to know his record. Now, I am actually an Antonio Pierce fan. I actually like him. I think he's a great coach. And I think this is why it's important that I'm commenting the way I am.
Mm-hmm.
I actually like Antonio Pierce as a coach. I think he is a motivator. However, there are 2 major questions with Antonio Pierce. 1, can he encourage and extrapolate upon a more robust playbook on the offensive side of the ball? And if you're a Raiders fan and questioning why I'm asking that question, I don't think you're objective enough. I'm sorry. I think that's a fair comment.
Okay, so I'll answer that. So yes, I do think they can do better, because we had Josh McDaniels last year.
Whoa! Hold on. Let me finish though. I am uniquely qualified to comment on what I saw last year from the Raiders for 2 reasons. 1, I'm a Broncos fan, and 2, I am largely neutral on Josh McDaniels. And I think that puts me in a unique position as a Broncos fan to comment on what I saw from the Raiders. One, the Raiders outperformed where they should have been based on what they performed on earlier in the year. And I believe that is because their head coach is a motivator of men, which is a big deal when it comes to the NFL.
I agree on that.
Now that is the skewed positive side. The flip side of that same coin, if you will, is can they counteract the years of experience and intuition, amongst other things, in the NFL level to counteract what Josh McDaniels has come across in the NFL level? Now,
that hurts. Yeah, that part hurts. If we could add Carr when Carr left, McDaniel said, "Don't change the play." Carr's biggest asset was he gets up to the line of scrimmage, he can change the play. And that's where he thrived. When McDaniels took over, you can't change the play. You run my play, nothing else. And then when, he left and McDaniels doing the same thing with, with his quarterbacks that he had. And you're right about AP. The culture changed. So let me ask you, what was the Raiders' record against the AFC West when AP took over?
Pardon me?
I mean, anybody. I mean, what is his record?
I don't think they lost.
We didn't lose.
Yeah.
You didn't lose what?
You didn't lose a game.
AFC West game.
In the last 8 games of the NFL season?
No, against us.
When Pierce
just
when
the
AP
AFC
took
West.
over, they didn't lose in the AFC West game.
No, you didn't lose an AFC West game. You're correct, but that's
and you. Well, the other part, can we do an offense?
Whoa, hold on. That's only part of the. That's only part of your navigable path in terms of winning. Part of your navigable path in terms of winning, as in like truly winning, is game planning.
Agreed.
Now, can Antonio Pierce take, let's just say he's here, right? And let's say Andy Reid is here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think that is arguable. Andy Reid is at a different level than Antonio Pierce. Now,
absolutely, Andy Reid's earned all the cred that he deserved.
Right. I think we agree on that, right? Like I think we can mutually agree on that. Okay, great. Now, when you're looking ahead, as in looking at Antonio Pierce and his trajectory, and I think that's fair, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, has Antonio Pierce learned enough from his first handful of games?
Absolutely not. And who's whispering in AP's ear? Marvin Lewis. That's the assistant head coach.
He is
not
a great example to use, in my opinion. I think he's a great counter to Antonio Pierce. I think he's a great mentor to Antonio Pierce. However, Marvin Lewis was a multiplier of a team that was lesser than based on the owner. And I think the owner has overcome some of his own deficiencies in the Bengals because they drafted an elite quarterback in Joe Burrow. However, I do question whether or not the meshing of Antonio Pierce and Marvin Lewis is going to be enough. And I truly mean that, enough to leapfrog the Raiders to get back to where you were 20 to 25 years ago.
We're going to find out.
No, and trust me, I am willing to be wrong. In fact, I think it would be wonderful for the NFL to start getting back to parity, where you start ending up with the Raiders starting to get back to where they were of years of old. I would want nothing more than that, to be quite honest, because I think that's important.
Well, I guess we went from talking about last year to this year. Compared to what was in place before him, absolutely there's been a big charge, a big difference in the culture of what this team is and the excitement. You can ask pretty much anybody in the chat, a Raider Nation, how they felt last year, and then with AP taking over with that excitement and just seeing how the culture is coming in. They're talking to free agents and they're like, can you fit our culture? If you can't fit the culture, then you're not coming in. And they haven't signed anybody. And they said, AP said there was like 5 pure Raiders in the draft. And they felt like they got all 5. So we'll find out. I do feel like the culture has changed. And I bet you same thing for Robert. The culture has changed. And Richie, I'm sure you kind of feel the same thing for your team. The culture is changing. So we got the same excitement over here. And do I feel like he can lead this team? Yeah, he's not calling the plays. He's not calling the offense. He's not calling the defense. He's got guys out there doing that for him. He's just got to make the right decision and, doing when he does the timeouts and motivating his men to play that type of football.
Jack, we're at different timelines.
Well, you're talking from John Madden days, or something like that. That's a different story.
No, you're putting words in my mouth, and that's not what I said. I believe AP is a competent and great head coach. I believe he mentors players the right way. I believe he approaches professional football players the right way. And I believe he can do the right thing the right way. However, my point is I think you're a year out. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying you're a year out.
We'll see. I can see them, squeaking into the playoffs.
Right.
This defense could be on par with the Baltimores, the Clevelands, the 49ers, and so forth.
No.
What?
No.
Come on.
Dude, you're on drugs.
Top 3 defense in the NFL?
California.
Come on. No way. The Raiders can be maybe top 10.
Look, if you told me that your offense was going to be starting to get into the upper tier of the NFL, I could agree with you.
That's going to be the issue. It's going to be the offense. And you asked the question earlier, do I feel like can they improve over last season? Yes, because you're going to have a full offseason. You got a new offensive coordinator. And you got, instead of, like we talked about, McDaniels won't let you change the plays if you're a quarterback, so you can't audible.
That's not true.
Well, no, that was true. That's the whole reason why Carr got gone.
No, you're misinterpreting what I said. McDaniels will let you change the play at the line of scrimmage
if you're Tom Brady.
If he believes you are an elite quarterback and are capable of doing so. He did not believe your current quarterback core was capable of making those A versus B decisions. Now, AP might believe differently. And this could be the blow-up season for the Raiders where AP believes that your quarterback is capable. I mean AFC 4 in terms of
AFC 12.
Well, whatever. He keeps on changing his number, so I refuse to.
Oh, is it 12 now?
Yeah.
Right. So he can attempt to mock Tom Brady, and that's cool. But the point is that I'm going to refer to him as AFC 4, which is he can either show that he is in fact AOC 12, or he can revert to AOC 4. And what I mean by that is there is a certain mental capacity that exists within these upper tier quarterbacks at the NFL level. And that is, can you process what is happening at the line of scrimmage fast enough? And I think you and I can both agree on this. I truly believe so. Which is
I gotta blow this out just because it's too good.
Me too, Edward. Me too.
I disagree.
Really?
I would in today's NFL, I believe a superior offensive attack is more beneficial to your team than a superior defensive attack. Now, that being said, the teams that win the Super Bowl have an overperforming defensive attack. However, when you look at their offense, they're always in the top 10.
Yeah.
And that's because the rules in today's NFL favor the offense rather than the defense. And as a result of that, you need a superior offense over a defense, or at the very least, you need a superior offense that can exploit the defense on the other side based on your skill sets at A versus B. Now, with regards to what we're talking about the Raiders, Jack, to kind of quickly go back to what we were talking about, which is
bring it back.
What you're needing an offense for the Raiders that can elevate the players that are there. And what I mean from that is you need an offense that can actually take offensive players like your wide receiver 1 and others that have proven to be elite level players at the NFL level and bring them back to that level.
Okay.
And if you can bring them back to that level.
So the number one wide receiver in the whole AFC West is Davante Adams. And who his quarterback coach was in Green Bay was Getsby. Now he's the offensive coordinator. So they're definitely on the same page. They're going to know. He's going to know exactly what Davante wants. Davante is going to know what he wants. He's teaching the other guys what Getsby is trying to promote and put out there.
They're going to try.
I'll put one wrinkle in that plan. You're missing a very important piece, and that is Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback of that team, and it's a lot easier to dial up plays for your wide receivers when you have that guy throwing you the ball.
There's no doubt about that for any team in reality, except for Alex's team, which
that's given though. I feel like we could at this point kind of just admit to that.
Yeah, because if AR was on any of the other teams in our division, absolutely, he would still be number 2.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that.
I think you need to assess things in terms of what Robert was saying, which is when you have a quarterback to wide receiver connection like Aaron Rodgers had to your number 1 wideout on your team, there is a certain shorthand that exists. I'm sorry, it's just true. Which is,
well, and for anyone, you're going from AR to any other quarterback. Frankly, there's going to be definitely a difference. But I will say this: at least there's a connection between AOC 12 and Davante last year, getting some games in as a rookie who went in as a third stringer and coming out, going 5-4, sweeping the AFC West, and now he's going into year 2 with a different offensive coordinator who knows Davante. It installed plays, and you don't have a Josh McDaniels, or as I got banned on Captain Show for saying different words, we'll just call him McFire. So right. It's only going to be a positive. It's just like Robert's team. You're going from that old head coach to your new head coach. It's only a positive, and having him being also the offensive coordinator. Now it's going to be better. It can't get worse in reality.
Well, it can actually, yes.
And I got 15%, guys.
Well, we had previous comments to make sure you had your phone charged.
I did. I was
We
at
have been going
96%.
We have been going for about 2.5 hours here.
But
But you know,
Jack, to be clear here, and I do think we need to end the show sooner rather than later. I think we need to be honest, right? Like, I've gone through this with the Denver Broncos more than most of the other teams have in the AFC West, which is when you change coaches, when you change offensive schemes, when you change just general concepts, you need to have the player personnel in order to do it. And so the question is, do you have the current personnel to make the changes that you believe are critical to succeed?
it's going to be interesting. I will say this. You know, Colton Miller, still from his shoulder injury last year, still is like, you know, practicing on the sidelines. He's a solid, you know, left tackle. JDJ Johnson, Jackson Powers. I think he's going to be solid. I like him. I really do. You know, he's like kind of an incognito. James is okay. He's not great. He's just okay. Parham, you move from the left guard to the right guard. And it's going to be about Munford. You know, everyone like in Raider Nation is like, okay, we got to replace Munford. But he's kind of proven himself to like, he was okay. So the offensive line is going to be your biggest question, because the offensive weapons, besides quarterback, I would take the Raiders' offensive weapons over any of the offensive weapons in the division. When you got Devontae, you got Mayers, you got Myers, and then now, you know, we got Brock Bowers on there. And then we also got rid of Darren Waller. At the time, I didn't like it, but we got Trey Tucker.
Wrong.
I'm wrong. Okay. Whose offensive weapons are better?
The Chiefs.
The Chiefs.
I'd take Pacheco over your running back. I'll take Travis Kelce over both those tight ends. And I'll honestly, like, Devontae Adams is maybe the only player that I would argue is like a better wide receiver than any wide receiver the Chiefs have. But I'll take the Chiefs' collective wide receiver room over what the Raiders have.
So who are the wide receivers that are better than Mayers? Not Michael Mayers, but Myers.
No, you're
Kobe?
no, hold on, Robert. I'm going to take this. You're conflating wide receivers to tight ends. So, as an example,
Well, they got a Mayers and they got a Myers.
I don't care who you have, and Myers is a good wide receiver. In fact, he's a great wide receiver. However, the problem you have is that he is limited in what he can do. He is a great blocker. He is a good pass catcher. However, he lacks the ability to break away from coverage.
True. He's a big dude.
No. I'm not disagreeing with you. And this is, I think, where we might disagree, right? Or we may agree, but agree to disagree. Which is, if you have a reasonable cornerback core on the opposing team, Myers will not do well. If you have a below average cornerback core on the opposing team, Myers will probably struggle. Now, you have a great tight end core on your team now. However, you have a rookie who has not proven himself. Now, could he kill it? Sure. Could Bowers just absolutely light the world on fire? Sure. But you need to prove it first. And I am always a prove it first person. I am not going to sit there and say, Surtain is a great pick at number 4 overall or 5 overall. Now, has Surtain proved me wrong? Yes. Is he an above average corner? Yep. Is he a top corner? Yep. But is he someone that I would have picked over a defensive interior defensive lineman? No. I would have much preferred an interior defensive pass rusher over Surtain. And in my opinion, the reason for that is that's a shorter distance to the quarterback. If you can get a guy that can get to the quarterback faster and quicker, I would much rather have that guy over a corner on my team versus someone who is better at covering versus someone else. And that's just my opinion. And I think today's NFL requires interior pass rush over cornerback play. And I think that we've seen that play out consistently over the last, I want to say, 7 years.
Oh, I agree. If you got an interior pass rush, that makes the shortest route to the quarterback. I mean, look at Chris Jones, beast, just absolutely been a beast. And he went from, it's like fighting to be trying to get number one, but once Donald retired, he's number one. And right now, Christian Wilkerson is, one of the top defensive tackles coming in. So I could see that pressure coming in there from Christian Wilkerson. And then you're going to get that pressure from Max Crosby, always from the outside. And Kuntz stepped up after AP took over, and he ended up with 8 sacks. So, and then, of course, you got Tyree, who was drafted number 7 overall. He had a foot injury, was not expected to play at all, and just learn. And now he's coming back healthy and worked out with Max the whole offseason. So when I say about the defensive front, that's your NASCAR package right there. And it's going to be totally different this year than it was last year. And the Raiders had a top 10 defense last year. So things are going to change. And I do agree, you got to work from the trenches and then you work outside. So talking about Diggs on the outside, it's kind of a mute point when it comes to talking about the middle. So I don't know how we're comparing the Raiders wide receivers to Diggs, but
no one compared Diggs to your Raiders wide receivers, but
that's where we went. We went from the Raiders wide receivers. I said their weapons were good. Yeah. Again, it's the quarterback is the weakest.
But that's
arguably the Raiders and the Broncos are kind of in the same boat, not knowing really what they have at quarterback. And of course the Chargers and KC, well, again, Mahomes the GOAT.
I disagree. Yeah. And this is why I disagree. You saw Russell Wilson and at minimum, and I'm saying this is your low bar, which is what's his name? He was the best quarterback in the offseason too. He was your backup quarterback.
Stidham.
So Stidham as the low bar for the Broncos has been incredibly upper brow for the Broncos in terms of what Peyton has wanted to run. And
I like Stidham.
No, Stidham. In fact, most Raiders fans that I've spoken to in the this offseason, wish that he was still with the Raiders as a backup at minimum.
Well, yeah, you know what? We didn't sign him because you guys signed him for a 2-year, $10 million contract, $5 million a year, and then we're paying Minshew, $15 million. So, yeah, if we can get a Stidham for that type of price, and I would say there would not be a quarterback competition the way it is right now. I would say AOC 12 would own that job. But, yeah, to get him and save all that, an extra $10 million, and then use it somewhere else. Again, going back to what Robert said, use the money, spend it somewhere else. Then you can go out and get an Xavier Howard and throw him on the back end.
Right, but my point is that Stidham has showed out this offseason in terms of being able to do the right thing and be able to put the ball in the right spot and digest the playbook the way it's supposed to be played. When you look at further out, Bo Nix, I think, has shown that he is further ahead than most second-year quarterbacks, but is not showing out as a year 3 quarterback in year 1. And I think you need a year 1 quarterback to show it as a year 3 quarterback to play in the NFL as a starter. And when I'm saying this is that what the Chiefs had in Mahomes was a guy that showed that he could be the guy. They held him back to assess the NFL defenses because they're more complex. And they wanted him to be able to digest them better. I believe that the Broncos are trying to do the same thing with Bo Nix. I think that he is showing similar traits to being able to progress, but they're trying to hold him back because it's the best thing for him. And in my opinion, from what I've heard, just generally speaking, is that they're not wanting Nix to start day 1 in large part for the same reasons why the Chiefs didn't want Mahomes to start year 1 or day 1, which is the NFL defenses are far more complex than what they played in college. And as a result, they don't want their confidence to get killed. So if they can hold them back just, 50%, 60% of the season, they believe they have a better chance of having that quarterback succeed.
Well, it makes sense. You don't want to rush them in there if you don't have to. I mean, you've said that on a different show. It's like, again, the ultimate thing is let your rookie quarterback sit. And nobody thought AOC 12 being the number 3 quarterback last year would take over and become a starter and go 5-4. Again, the second best record for a rookie quarterback coming out last year. I mean, and again, in way of Mahomes, you got to look who was in front of him for the first year. Alex Smith was.
It's not like they were a bad team. I mean, they had already won the AFC West. You're right, Kenna.
Right, but
yeah,
the AFC West right now is in a bit of a battle. And I say that respectfully. Well, it is. I see the Raiders, the Broncos, both battling for that divisional spot. I believe the Chargers are exactly 1 year behind.
I could argue with that.
No,
I mean, I don't know. I think all 3 of the teams have a lot of questions and all different flavors of what those questions are, but there's a lot of what ifs for each 3 of your teams going into the season and if it's all going to click or not.
I think the biggest thing is, and we've seen this every year in the NFL, you cannot compete in this league if you do not have the quarterback to do it. And we see that every year. The Steelers consistently have the best defenses and roll out just absolute piss poor QB performances. That's why they're taking flyers on Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. It's because they know that they can give you something much better than what Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett were giving you. And they made the playoffs with those 2 guys at QB. So that's why the Steelers are a scary team. But if you look at the entire AFC West, there are 2 teams that have set QBs, and it's the Chargers and the Chiefs. The Chargers' biggest issue has been they haven't been able to have a defense that is even average that can keep up with the offense, because the offense has been top 5 or top 10 every year that Herbert's been in the league, even when they were absolutely trash with the worst head coach possible. So it's just a matter of now
Your defense wasn't top 5.
No, offense.
Oh,
Our defense was. Oh God, no! Our defense was never top anything. Our defense
was.
Our defense was bottom 5 consistently, and that's my point. My point is that this team, Herbert dragged this team to the playoffs that year with that terrible ass defense, And if Harbaugh can give him average, the 15th ranked defense, 16th ranked defense, I guarantee we'll make the playoffs because Herbert is just that good of a quarterback, and we've seen him be that good and drag this team to victories.
I agree. That's true. The question is, do you have the player personnel right now? And
I mean, our defense isn't horrible. Our defense, our talent-wise, I should say, our defense.
Yeah,
isn't
but that's what
horrible.
I'm saying. Like, you guys are saying Raiders got to figure out their QB situation. Chargers got to figure out their defensive situation, as well as what is their new offensive identity. Mm-hmm. Broncos got to figure out QB situation, as well as, you know, which future pieces are we moving forward with. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, there's, for all of the what ifs we're talking about of the other teams, like everyone else has a similar what if scenario.
God damn, Alex, it's got to feel good. We're sitting where you're sitting.
It's not bad.
Well, Alex, the question is that the Chargers have had Herbert. The Chargers have had Herbert for a number of years,
mm-hmm.
and they have not gotten past a playoff berth at best.
Well, I kind of feel for the Chargers. It's your head coach who plays Madden all the time.
Thank you.
Right.
And then at the same time, you know, nobody can stay on the field.
Jack, that's exactly what I'm getting at, right? Which is the Raiders have struggled to kind of do what the Chiefs have done. And I'm not trying to be crass towards Derek Carr because I like him a lot. But Derek Carr is effectively Alex Smith. Derek Carr was amazing, but not great. And the Raiders needed great. And so the best thing for the Raiders to have done would have been to traded Alex or Carr, rather, when he was in the peak, to another team that wanted a great quarterback and move on.
That's good.
Well, Sharif, I have a question for you. When you look at what the Chiefs did prior to Patrick Mahomes, what would you say they were?
Were the Chiefs prior to Mahomes?
Yeah.
I mean, it's still the AFC West champs. Playoff team.
For 1 year.
I mean, I think, well, maybe two. They were pretty – because Reed came in 2013. I think 2015 forward, they were, like, winning. They weren't – before that, they were for sure top 10 picking.
They were okay. And they were good and arguably great. But were they really running away with it?
No.
Like, so, Alex, this is why you and I get along. Right? Like, this is why you and I actually get along properly, right? Which is you can be honest with me and I can be honest with you. You were good but not great.
Absolutely.
You were great but not good. Like you know exactly what I mean when I say that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly my point. Mahomes is a different level of quarterback. He was able to look at a Tyreek Hill and say, "Hold my beer, I got it."
Damn. Yeah.
Right? Like just to be real and let's call a duck a duck. And Alex Smith could not do that. And that's what made A versus B different from, you know, Alex Smith versus Patrick Mahomes. Right? It is what it is.
Yeah.
And that's cool. It's also why when the Chiefs played the Broncos in Week 17, when Patrick Mahomes looked like an elite level quarterback.
Oh yeah, I remember first pass. I was like, "We're good. we're gonna be good next year."
Right. And my whole point was when I watched the Chiefs play the Broncos in Week 17, I was like, "Oh, we're in trouble."
Yeah. First one was like 30-yard rip, Demetrius Harris. You may be asking, who's Demetrius Harris? Exactly. Just on the money. I was like, damn, Alex Smith isn't going to be doing it. He can't do anything like that. Then he turns around and gives Albert Wilson, I think, like 120 receiving yards. Some of you may be saying, who's Albert Wilson? Exactly.
Right.
I remember him.
Yeah. Then he got some bag from Miami and I think disappeared.
Right. But that's my point, right? Which is Mahomes took average wide receivers and made them look great. He took above average wide receivers and made them look amazing. And he took Hall of Fame wide receivers
and added to their stats.
Added to their
resume. Yeah.
Right. And so that's my point, right? Which is the best quarterbacks do those things.
Well, he is absolutely the best quarterback in the entire NFL. So, I mean, there's 30 other quarterbacks that are not as good as him.
But
that's
Jack,
for sure.
My point is Peyton Manning did those things.
Yeah, but nobody ever thought Peyton Manning was the best quarterback in the league at any point. Because he was in there with Brady, Breeze.
I did at one point.
Yes, they did.
When he won the Super Bowl?
Yes, they did.
I mean, I personally never thought Peyton Manning was better than Tom Brady in his career, even though when he won the Super Bowls.
That's your prerogative, and that's unfortunate. But
do you think Peyton Manning's better than Tom Brady?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I think talent-wise, skill set-wise.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, are we going by that logic? Because Aaron Rodgers is the best QB of all time. If we're doing that,
no, he's not.
If we're going by purely talent and what he's able to do on the field, he was miles ahead of Peyton Manning.
No. At the period in his career, I would agree. But Manning always accelerated past Aaron Rodgers because Peyton Manning always understood that he was not the be-all and end-all. Aaron Rodgers never did.
Yeah, but that we're talking about what quarterback is better in terms of talent and just pure skill, and it's not even close. Aaron Rodgers is, in terms of skill and talent, far beyond what Peyton Manning is.
Right, but Aaron Rodgers always believed that he could be better and was better than everyone around him, and he never.
I mean, for a while, he wasn't wrong.
He never pushed himself past that. I actually believe that's a generational problem, but that's kind of my prerogative on the issue.
Yeah. That's fair.
And so my general issue is Peyton Manning came from a what I will refer to as a middling generation. He came from a generation that was neither A versus B. He kind of split the middle. And the reason why I think that's so important, and by the way, Tom Brady did as well. Right? There's a reason why I think the four of us can agree. Tom Brady and Peyton Manning is going to be the hardest thing to overcome.
Oh, yeah. Everybody wanted it to be Mahomes and Allen.
Those guys are somewhere up here.
Yeah.
Right? And the reason why is simply because you're dealing with a different level of drive. You're dealing with mental capacity, mental processing, a split of multi-generational. You're dealing with like just so much.
Yeah.
I have no way of other describe. Like, there is no other way of describing it, which is you had the Brett Favres and others of the world that were shielding them, and you have the younger generation that was deflecting from them. And I don't think we will ever have another quarterback like combination of Brady and Manning that will ever compare to those two competing against each other. I just don't think it'll exist.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree.
Because they're a sweet spot in the NFL, for, in my opinion, which is in large part because the NFL has gone so soft now, where Mahomes can run to the sideline and get called for, all sorts of things, even though he fakes going to the sideline and then turns inside. But Manning couldn't get away with that. Brady couldn't get away with that.
Yeah, because
Manning also ran like a 5.4
No,
I'm pretty sure Brady are like a 5.6 too.
Stop lying.
It wasn't that good.
Manning and Brady both run a 10.44,
Yeah.
and then their clocks were wrong by 6 seconds.
Yep.
Exactly.
Sundial time.
Right, and that's like a true story, right? Like, let's be real. We saw Manning run an out route. Like we saw Manning run an out route in like Super Bowl in like the latter part of like 2014, 2015. And it was like watching an injured bird trying to run on the ground.
Like
a sloth?
Deer.
Like
Newborn baby deer.
a sloth said, "Hold my beer, I'll run faster." Right?
Yeah.
And Brady was in a similar position. So either way, I think we're seeing a generational shift in quarterbacks. The mental side of the game has been pushed to the side.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing these quarterbacks shift in terms of what they're required to do, what we want them to do. And I think we're giving them more credit than they deserve.
That's fair.
Either ways, guys, I'm going to leave this to you just for a minute. I just can be back in 1 second. I'll be right back, and then we'll close out the show.
For sure.
Boom.
All right. Boom.
And that's the way the cookie crumbles. I don't know how to close the show out. I don't think.
I'm not sure how to close the show out either,
So-
but this one went on a wild one. I did not think we were gonna pass 3 hours.
Goodness, conspiracies. All right, since I got you guys here, let's talk about the people on the grassy knoll. Who was it?
Oh, it looks like Jack's phone died.
Did we land on the moon? I'm going to tell you why we didn't.
Oh, hell no. Oh man.
Yeah, where did he go?
I think his phone died.
Oh, Jack's. Oh,
His phone was at 4%,
dude.
and that was a couple minutes ago.
There we go.
All right. We're
We're just chilling.
yeah, we're just chilling, waiting for Richie Rich to get back. Man, this one went all over the place. I almost forgot we had Jeff on here at one point.
We did. Yeah, DZ's with me. It was the CIA.
Yeah.
I think that actually was released. Didn't they release a bunch of information on that? On the JFK?
Yeah, something like that. Like they
I
knew
don't
about
know.
it or something. Yeah, it's all a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, whatever. I do agree, though, DZ. I think QB play was a little better back in the day. Well,
yeah. I think it
was just harder. It was harder to be elite back in the day.
I was gonna say I disagree with that. I don't think QB play was better. I think QB play was actually worse, and just the guys were so good that there was like the clear upper tier of quarterbacks back then. Now I feel like the argument for obviously
There's
like
like 10.
like the top 3 are pretty much like cemented, but then the arguments for 4 through 12, 13 are like, you know, you can make some solid arguments.
And they're getting paid regardless. I mean, like Trevor
and they're
Lawrence.
getting
Trevor Lawrence
exactly.
should not have gotten whatever he get, $200 million guaranteed.
But you know what it is too, Alex? It's the fact that they don't want to lose the guy and see him go do better somewhere else. They would rather overpay him to be mediocre on his team than to watch him leave in free agency and have the potential of he's going to ball out and we're going to be forever looked at as the team that didn't pay him.
Yeah. And that is why we didn't land on the moon. So
Well, guys, we've had a great show tonight. I think we've had some great insight in terms of our upcoming opponents.
Yes.
I mean, we've had 4 of our games against the Browns brought up today, and we've had, you know, obviously our divisional rivals brought up again. which is like, you know, the entire purpose of the show. So anyways, guys, until next week, where the West Side is the best side, and we start getting into more details of our AFC West
on the Steelers.
We're gonna discuss in the coming weeks the Steelers, the Bengals, and the Ravens, which are huge components, I believe, of our upcoming schedule. The AFC North is gonna be brutal.
Yeah,
I mean, brutal.
It ain't gonna be fun.
No,
I'm not looking forward to any of those games against those teams.
No, I mean, those teams, in my opinion, are going to be probably the hardest for all of our teams combined.
Yeah.
I think that division is going to be just a different level of competition for our teams because they are built differently than we are. I think they are built with a different composition. I think they're different with they're just built differently in terms of size, speed, running the ball.
We don't stop Bronco.
No, we don't.
About to.
Yeah, except we're about to.
But we don't.
Anyways, guys, I thought that comment was funny. Anyways, until next week, where the West Side is the best side, we're going to go into more information. I am looking forward to the Steelers next week.
Yes, sir.
Which is what we're going to be going on about in terms of our AFC North components, our opponents, rather. Until the West Side, the next side. Peace out.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down.